Chapter 1108, Assassin. Ling Han suddenly stopped in his tracks. What's wrong? Shui Yanyu asked. Ling Han pondered for a moment, and replied, I have a nagging feeling that someone's following us. Is it the Dark Night Hall? Or is it Zhao Luan or Xia Wuque? Shui Yanyu listed the possibilities. However, a bitter smile instantly appeared on her face. There were truly quite a lot of people who wanted to kill Ling Han. Ling Han thought for a moment, and said, it can't be Zhao Luan. He's with Great General Zhao, and with Great General Zhao's status, there's no need for him to follow me sneakily. If he wants to kill me, he'll do so directly. It can't be Xia Wuque either, as there aren't any Sun Moon tier elites by his side. After seeing my defenses, he won't come over to ask for a beating. It's most probably the Dark Night Hall. Ling Han made his judgment. If it's the Dark Night Hall, why haven't they attacked yet? Could it be that the assassin is not strong enough, so they're currently calling for reinforcement from other elites? Shui Yanyu also started to speculate. Ling Han shook his head, and said, this place is unfamiliar to everyone, and it's even impossible to differentiate north from south. How can they describe my location? Indeed. Since no one has ever been here before, how can they give our location to others without having a map to reference? A troubled expression appeared on Shui Yanyu's face. She clapped her hands, and said, since that's the case, the assassin probably hasn't appeared because they're too weak. Not necessarily. Ling Han didn't agree with this, and he said, perhaps they know of Little Azura's existence, and also know that he's not an easy opponent. Thus, they're searching for a better opportunity to strike. That's right. Shui Yanyu hurriedly nodded in agreement. She had subconsciously overlooked the Azura Demon Emperor's existence. The main reason for this was because he continued to use shameless methods to make his presence known. How could she think, oh, he's also an elite? Huh? Why haven't I detected anything out of the ordinary? The Azura Demon Emperor asked. There was a confused look on his face. Ling Han shook his head, and said, although you've entered a Sun Moon tier puppet, your own power is still only at the Mountain River tier. In other words, your divine sense is still too weak. Moreover, this place can weaken the perception of one's divine sense, so it's extremely normal that you aren't able to detect anything abnormal. A dispirited expression instantly appeared on the Azura Demon Emperor's face. He couldn't raise his cultivation level in the Immortal realm, and this left him feeling extremely dissatisfied. Rather than letting them follow us, why don't we lure them out of hiding? Ling Han rubbed his chin in thought. If there were someone continually following behind him, he would feel extremely restricted when doing things. For example, he wouldn't be able to enter and exit the Black Tower as he pleased, as this would risk exposing his secrets. How are we going to lure them? Shui Yanyu asked. We'll have Little Azura run far away, Ling Han said with a smile. He had the Vajra seal and the Lion seal, and thus he wasn't afraid of Sun Moon tier elites, even if they were at the pinnacle of the Sun Moon tier. Master, you don't want the loyal Little Azura anymore? The Azura Demon Emperor instantly acted like a cute puppy. It was a shame that there was no tail for him to wag. Piss off. Ling Han couldn't stand him, and he immediately kicked him aside. Master. The Azura Demon Emperor instantly flew several hundred kilometers away. A smile appeared on Ling Han's face, and he said, let's hope that the assassin will appear sooner rather than later. Otherwise, it'll feel like there's a poisonous snake spying on us the entire time. There was a look of worry on Shui Yanyu's face. If the assassin attacked, they would definitely be an elite at the Sun Moon tier. Perhaps they wouldn't even give Ling Han the opportunity to hide into his Black Tower or use his divine seals. Don't worry, your hubby isn't any ordinary person, Ling Han said with a chuckle. Girl, flash me a smile. This made Shui Yanyu laugh, and she rolled her eyes at him in annoyance. The two of them continued forward, and the Azura Demon Emperor heeded the command to keep his distance from them. He purposefully created an opportunity for the assassin. One day later. He. There was a burst of cold laughter, and a figure instantly appeared before Ling Han and Shui Yenyu. This was a bony middle-aged man who appeared especially ugly. Only the occasionally appearing sun and moon behind his back signified that he was an elite who had reached the low extreme of the sun-moon tier. No wonder he didn't appear before. Sure enough, his battle prowess is weaker than that of the Azura Demon Emperor. Brat, I know that you purposefully sent that puppet away to create an opportunity for me, the assassin said with a cold chuckle. Although I don't know why, but, do you really think that you can escape from me? There's a definitive difference in power, and no amount of scheming will be able to change this. Ling Han chuckled, and said, You finally appeared. Say, you're a sun-moon tier elite, after all, so don't you feel ashamed for tailing 2 mountain river tier cultivators? You're seeking death, the middle-aged assassin said with a cold humph. He immediately charged toward Ling Han. He was an assassin, so killing his target was naturally the most important thing. He had only endured and stayed in hiding because he had feared the Azura Demon Emperor. Now that this threat was gone, there was nothing else that he needed to worry about. All he needed to do was kill his target. Boom! Boundless black light surged from his body and transformed into a giant spear that stabbed toward Ling Han. Lion Seal. Ling Han retrieved a divine seal and slapped it onto his body. He instantly felt a terrifying power course through his body. Hundreds of divine patterns materialized on his skin. Apart from mountains and rivers and suns and moons, there was another more direct method to determine one's cultivation, that was to look at how many divine patterns one possessed. Mountain river tier cultivators possessed less than 100, sun-moon tier cultivators possessed less than 1,000, heavenly body tier cultivators possessed less than 10,000, and so on. Right now, there were a whopping 800 divine patterns on Ling Han's body. Pung! Ling Han swung his fist, and his origin power formed into a large hand, then smashed into the black spear. The black spear instantly crumbled into dust upon coming in contact with the large hand, which continued to surge toward the middle-aged assassin. Fuck! The middle-aged assassin was instantly scared witless. There were 800 divine patterns. 800. One had to realize that even elites at the consummate level of the sun-moon tier generally only possessed 300 or so divine patterns. This was because possessing 1,000 divine patterns meant that one was already at the level of the best sun-moon tier elites. So, what kind of concept was 800 divine patterns? This meant that one was almost at the level of pseudo-heavenly body tier elites. He would be crushed into pulp if he were scraped by just a tiny bit of the large hand, let alone being hit by it head-on. He frantically used his movement techniques in a bid to escape. Boom! Fortunately, his reaction had been fast enough. A vacuum appeared near the seabed as the fist smashed down, while he was swept hundreds of meters away by the surging waves. A figure flashed over, and Ling Han appeared before him again. The middle-aged assassin's face almost became green with terror. Although he had some life-saving treasures, none of them could block power at the pseudo-heavenly body tier. This was an overwhelming power. He could only flee as if his life depended on it. Only now did he realize just how incredible his target's trump cards were. No wonder he had sent that powerful puppet away. It was because he had been luring him out, not because he was arrogant beyond belief. Huh! He yelped in surprise because he suddenly sensed a familiar aura. Tai Feng, Elder Tai Feng. He was overcome with delight. Elder Tai Feng was an upper-level being of the Dark Night Hall, and he was definitely an elite. He was at the consummate level of the heavenly body tier. Huh, I can't believe I came across him here. Everything's settled now. Even if Ling Han has special techniques to raise his power to the pseudo-heavenly body tier, he's still no match genuine heavenly body tier elites. Moreover, Elder Tai Feng is at the peak stage of the consummate level of the heavenly body tier, and he's more so a 4-star elite. Chapter 1109, Done For. Xiao. An elder streaked over, and his powerful aura made it feel as if the sky were collapsing. One could barely breathe under the pressure of his aura. a supreme elite at the heavenly body tier. Ling Han's expression instantly became serious as he hurriedly started retreating. He was no match for such an elite, and he would have to seek refuge in his black tower even if this meant exposing the secret of his spatial god tool. Otherwise, his fate would be death. He rushed to Shui Yenyu's side before picking her up, and he was just about to enter the black tower. However, he suddenly faltered before he could enter. This was because he sensed another powerful aura. In fact, this aura was even more powerful than the heavenly body tier elders. Moreover, it seemed a little familiar. It's Empress Luan Xing. He immediately decided not to enter the black tower upon realizing this. Instead, he remained where he was, quietly waiting for things to play out. Elder Tai Feng. The middle-aged assassin was both surprised and delighted. However, he didn't realize that Elder Tai Feng was extremely disheveled at this moment. His clothes were in tatters, and they were more so drenched in blood. A regulation divine chain ferociously whipped over like a spear and caught up to Elder Tai Feng. Pooh! The divine chain pierced through his shoulder before trapping him in place. Elder Tai Feng was in an extremely sorry state. He had already been pursued by Empress Luan Xing for 1 day and 1 night, and he had already used all of the techniques that he could. However, all this was to no avail. Before this empress, his resistance was futile. He didn't dare to counterattack. Instead, he used his hand like a sword and sliced down toward his own shoulder. Blood sprayed through the air as half of his shoulder was cut off. However, the divine chain that was holding him in place also lost its effects. Yet just as he was about to flee again, a large white hand descended from the sky. This hand was slender and as smooth as jade, and it was filled with a sense of beauty. However, in Elder Tai Feng's eyes, this hand was like a talisman of death. A look of despair spread across his face. He had already used all of his trump cards. He couldn't block this attack. Boom! The large hand pressed down, and Elder Tai Feng was ruthlessly smashed into the bottom of the sea. When the large hand disappeared, it could be seen that at least 1/3 of his bones had been broken. He continuously coughed blood, and his aura had already fallen to an extremely low level. Elder Tai Feng. The middle-aged assassin almost wet his pants in fright. In his eyes, Elder Tai Feng was the #1 assassin in the world. There was no one that he couldn't kill. It wouldn't matter even if one were more powerful than Elder Tai Feng. Assassins wouldn't fight against their targets head-on. Instead, they would search for the best opportunity to launch a fatal strike. They would immediately leave after their attempt, regardless of whether they succeeded or failed. Generally speaking, heavenly body tier elites were extremely hard to kill. Who could stop them if they were hell-bent on escaping? However, a whopping 10 heavenly body tier elites had died at the hands of Elder Tai Feng. This was enough to prove just how terrifying this elite assassin was. But now? He was lying on the ground like a dead dog. He wasn't faking death, was legitimately unable to crawl up. The middle-aged assassin trembled in terror. Who was pursuing Elder Tai Feng? Their power was truly heaven-defying. Wang! A devastating aura swept over as Empress Luan Xing appeared. She was dressed in a brilliant yellow imperial robe, and there was also a vermilion cloak billowing behind her back. It was 3 or so meters long, and it billowed with a domineering might even though she was at the bottom of the sea. Of course, her breathtaking figure was also like a magnet to the eyes. It was flawless, and it could easily entrance those who laid eyes upon it. Empress Luan Xing, the middle-aged assassin, stammered. As a qualified assassin, he naturally recognized Empress Luan Xing, one of the most powerful elites of the galaxy. He gulped with great difficulty. Everyone said that Empress Luan Xing was powerful, and she was also one of the 3 rulers of the joint peace planet. He hadn't believed this before, and he had felt that this empress had merely ascended the throne thanks to her stunning looks. Now, however, he finally realized just how wrong he had been. "Please spare me, Your Majesty." Elder Tai Feng wailed in misery, and said, "I'm willing to submit to Your Majesty, and I'm willing to become your majesty's dog and slave. He was an assassin, not a martyr. Compared to his life, what was his dignity worth? Empress Luanxing ignored him completely. She slammed another palm down, and it was as if the world were shattering and heaven and earth were splitting open. Boom! Elder Typhon was smashed into pulp by this terrifying palm strike. Both his body and his soul were destroyed. Meanwhile, the middle-aged assassin was caught up in a tiny bit of the shock wave, yet this was enough to shred him into nothingness. So powerful. Ling Han thought to himself. This was the first time he had seen Empress Luanxing unleash her true might. Her battle prowess was overwhelming enough to make heaven and earth lose their luster. Empress Luanxing swept her gaze over Ling Han and Shui Yenyu as she landed on the ground. Then, she suddenly started to walk toward them. Ling Han's heart shuddered. Although they were all from the same majestic empire, he still had to remain vigilant. Moreover, the mind of a ruler was even harder to understand. Who knew what the Empress was thinking? Empress Luanxing suddenly stumbled, and the aura of primal chaos that enveloped her also became unstable. A supreme elite at the heavenly body tier actually stumbled as they walked? Ling Han instantly understood. Although Empress Luanxing had killed a supreme elite of the Dark Night Hall, she had also paid a price. That's right, she was definitely targeted by a surprise attack as well. Going by the Dark Night Hall's habits, they'll only attack if they have a 70 or 80% chance of success. Are you alright, Your Majesty? Ling Han asked hurriedly. This question was only an excuse to slow her down. Her target was clearly Shui Yenyu. Move over. Empress Luanxing chided. She extended an arm and sent Ling Han to the side. She then grabbed Shui Yenyu's hand, and was just about to bite down on her wrist. Ling Han was startled, and he instantly dashed over to protect her, not having the time to bother with anything else. He didn't have any other thoughts at this moment. There was only one thing running through his mind as a man: what was the point of living if he couldn't even protect his own women? Gasp! He felt a sharp pain on his neck, and his skin that was as tough as level 4 godly metal was instantly pierced open. To his surprise, Empress Luanxing had actually bitten down on his neck, and was now sucking on his blood. Are you a fucking vampire? Ling Han wanted to resist, and he instinctively raised his arm to push her. However, how could he contend with the power of a heavenly body tier elite? His action was in vain, completely futile. His blood continued to flow out, and his consciousness began to fade. Meanwhile, Shui Yenyu was stupefied by what she saw because right now, the postures of Ling Han and Empress Luanxing were far too dubious. One was biting the other's neck, and it was as if they were kissing. As for the other, his hands were resting on Empress Luanxing's voluptuous breasts in a grabbing action, no less. He's done for. He's done for. Shui Yenyu felt as if the world were becoming dark. Who didn't know that the Empress was as clean as ice and as pure as jade? Although she was loved and admired by many men, even including supreme rulers like the Eternity Sky Emperor and the Jade Drop Emperor, she didn't think anything of any of them. Right now, however, she was actually being sexually assaulted by Ling Han. Who would care whether he had done this on purpose or not? The important thing was that it had happened. When Empress Luanxing came to her senses, would Ling Han still be able to live? At this moment, she truly hated Ling Han's guts. Why did he have to interfere? He should have just let the Empress suck on her blood. Immortals had a powerful vitality anyway, and she would have only suffered a severely wounded vitality had her blood been sucked dry. However, she wouldn't die because of this. However, Ling Han was certainly going to die now. She suddenly reached a resolute decision in her mind. She drew her sword and ruthlessly stabbed it toward Empress Luanxing's back. Chapter 11:10, Getting Lucky. If only one of them could survive, Shui Yenyu naturally wished that it would be Ling Han. She didn't care what would happen to the joint peace planet after Empress Luanxing died, nor did she care that she and Ling Han would be hunted by heavens knew how many people. She didn't care about all that. At this moment, she only wished that Ling Han could live on. Pa. However, her sword was caught and tightly held by a hand. She couldn't stab it forward any further. It was Empress Luan Xing. She had already raised her head and turned around. Although Shui Yenyu couldn't see her expression, she believed that it was definitely one of rage and fury. Her own subject actually dared to assassinate her? This was high treason. A boundless killing intent swept outward, bringing with it the domineering might of the Empress. The color instantly drained from Shui Yenyu's face. However, she was unafraid. She simply looked at Ling Han lovingly. They couldn't live together, but they could at least die together. Yet, the fatal blow that she was expecting never arrived. She couldn't help but feel puzzled. She looked toward the Empress, only to see that she was enveloped in an aura of primal chaos. It was impossible to discern her expression. Ling Han's body shuddered as he slowly regained consciousness. The large loss of blood had caused him to faint, yet his divine sense was extremely powerful and tough, so he was naturally able to regain consciousness quickly. He reached out and grabbed onto Empress Luan Xing's wrist, a firm expression on his face. If you want to punish anyone, punish me. He was extremely weak, yet his tone was surprisingly firm. Empress Luan Xing flared up in rage. She was as clean as ice and as pure as jade, yet she had actually drunk a smelly man's blood. This made her feel as if she had been soiled. She raised her hand resolutely, and 4 heavenly bodies materialized behind her back. Each of the heavenly bodies radiated with a devastating aura, causing Ling Han's skin to instantly crack apart. However, his blood had already been sucked dry, and thus not a single drop of blood flowed out from his wounds. It was an extremely uncanny sight. You're returning kindness with hatred. Ling Han obviously wouldn't lie down and wait for death, and he immediately said, "Don't think that I don't know. You were wounded just then, and you sucked my blood in order to stabilize your situation. Or perhaps you used some kind of secret technique. So what?" Empress Luan Xing said coldly. Her target had originally been Shui Yenyu, and she wouldn't have killed her anyway. Had there been a need for Ling Han to interfere? Pay. She had been forced to suck the blood of this man, and they had even come into close and intimate contact. Just thinking about this gave her the goosebumps. It was nauseating to the extreme. As a ruler, you have to distinguish between kindness and hatred. If you kill us, you'll become an incompetent and morally bankrupt ruler. Ling Han spat out whatever he could think of. They had fallen into the hands of a heavenly body tier elite now, and they didn't have the ability to enter the Black Tower either. Thus, he naturally had to come up with other methods to save their lives. So what if I betray everyone in the world? Empress Luan Xing didn't fall into his trap, and continued, "Do you have any last words?" Fuck. You're not playing by the rules. Ling Han racked his brains for ideas. However, the difference in their power was too great, so it seemed as if all of his ideas would be useless. Humph. Empress Luan Xing struck her palm toward Ling Han's head. Ling Han was out of options. He had to use the power small tower even if it meant exposing the secret of the Black Tower. If worse came to worst, he would just flee to the ends of the world. He had entered the immortal realm now, and both heaven and earth were boundlessly large. It wasn't like the incredibly tiny small world, where elites would be able to find him easily. However, Empress Luan Xing suddenly stopped her attack halfway. Damn it, the Empress cursed in her mind. The Ninth King's thoughts suddenly appeared in her mind at this moment, preventing her from continuing her strike. She wanted to sever these thoughts, yet this would lead to extremely serious consequences. It would dissolve her 1,000,000 years of hard work into nothingness. As expected, she had prevented their relationship too late. The Ninth King had already developed good feelings toward this detestable man, and these very feelings were affecting her now. She steeled her heart and went to strike her palm down again, yet a feeling of intense anguish instantly welled up in her heart. This caused her to stop again. Damn it. Damn it. Empress Luan Xing humphed as she tossed Ling Han aside, and said in a frosty voice, "The events of today never happened." After saying this, she leaped into the air and instantly vanished from their sights. "How unreasonable," Ling Han said with a grimace. He had already circulated a drop of indestructible true fluid. However, indestructible true fluid was used to treat wounds, and he wasn't genuinely wounded. He had only lost a great deal of vitality, and thus even the indestructible true fluid wasn't able to help him recover completely. His face was still as white as a sheet. Shui Yanyu felt as if she had just woken up from a dream. They had actually escaped death. "Master, Master, little Azura has missed you dearly." The Azura Demon Emperor appeared, a look of fright and terror on his face. "Fuck the hell off." Ling Han kicked him aside. As expected, he couldn't be relied upon. When Empress Luan Xing had been present, he hadn't even dared to appear. Now that she was gone, he had hurriedly scuttled back over. This wasn't surprising, though. Even if the Azura Demon Emperor had returned, he would have merely been running to his own death. Thus, Ling Han only kicked him aside to vent his own anger. He didn't actually have any ill intentions. Ling Han breathed a sigh of relief, and said, "Phew, we weren't killed. How extremely fortunate." He would just pretend that he had been bitten by a dog. There were heaps of medicine in the Black Tower anyway, so he wouldn't need long to recover his vitality. Shui Yanyu rolled her eyes at him, and said, "Do you know that you indecently assaulted Her Majesty just then?" "Huh?" There was a puzzled expression on Ling Han's face, and he said, "Are you kidding? I was almost sucked dry just then. How could I have indecently assaulted that woman?" "Humph. I saw it clearly with my own two eyes. Both of your hands had grabbed onto Her Majesty's breasts." There was a strong feeling of jealousy in Shui Yanyu's voice. Her mind had been filled with worry for Ling Han at that time, and now that they were safe, she naturally started to feel jealous. "What?" Ling Han was stunned, and he raised his hands in disbelief. These two hands had actually grabbed Empress Luan Xing's voluptuous breasts. Fuck. Why couldn't he recall this at all? He hadn't felt anything. Shui Yanyu humphed, and said, "Do you still want more? Are you lost in the beautiful memories?" Sure enough, men couldn't be trusted. "Why are you feeling jealous?" Ling Han pulled her into his arms, and said, "I almost died just then, so how could I have thought about such matters?" A look of lingering fear appeared on Shui Yanyu's face. One of them had grabbed the Empress' breasts, while the other had attempted to assassinate her. However, none of them had died. This was an incredible miracle. "My wife still feel better." Ling Han chuckled softly as he cupped his hands over Shui Yanyu's Chuan-sized one breasts. They truly felt amazing. "Pervert." Shui Yanyu scolded. She was just about to pinch Ling Han, yet she realized that he had already collapsed into her lap and fallen into a deep slumber. Her tender feelings were instantly stirred, and she bent down to embrace him. This man had stood up in order to protect her. If he hadn't, none of these troubles would have ever arisen. She couldn't help but smile sweetly. She had met a man who was willing to sacrifice himself for her. What more could she ask for? She embraced Ling Han and let his head rest in her soft bosom so that he could get as good a rest as possible. However, she still couldn't understand why the Empress had suddenly let them go, especially since she had already developed such an intense killing intent toward them. What worldly matter could still strike fear in the Empress' mind? There was definitely none. However, she quickly pushed these thoughts to the back of her mind. She simply gazed at Ling Han with a loving expression, a sweet feeling permeating her heart. Chapter 11:11, Seeing Another Tower. After heavens knew how long, Shui Yanyu realized that Ling Han had already opened his eyes, and was now gazing at her. She suddenly became embarrassed, and she was just about to let go of him. However, she suddenly felt Ling Han's arms wrap around her waist. "Wife, let me lie here for a little longer," Ling Han said in a muffled voice, his head buried in her bosom. Shui Yenyu was both happy and embarrassed. However, her embarrassment still caused her to chide, "You're already so old, why are you still acting so spoiled?" Ling Han laughed loudly and nibbled at her breast. Only then did he stand up and say, "I feel so much better after having a nap." Although his vitality hadn't recovered fully yet, it was not far from doing so. Shui Yenyu rolled her eyes at him. This man had truly become addicted to performing perverted acts on her. He really couldn't control himself. The Azura Demon Emperor had already returned, but he obediently stayed in the distance, not daring to take a peep. Ling Han randomly ate some ginseng, Ganoderma, and other medicines. When he finished, he said, "Let's continue. Don't you need to rest for a little longer?" Shui Yenyu was still worried about Ling Han. His blood had just been sucked dry, after all, and it was difficult for him to recover even with his freakish recovery ability. "I'm fine." Ling Han cracked a smile. Then he scratched his head, and said, "However, what should I do if I come across the Empress again?" He had only spoken confidently before because he hadn't realized that he had grabbed Empress Luan Xing's breasts yet. However, if they met again in the future, he definitely wouldn't be able to resist looking at Empress Luan Xing's chest and recalling the feeling of grabbing it. Empress Luan Xing would probably go crazy if she saw this. Sigh, whatever. Shui Yenyu shook her head, and said, "If word of this gets out, I'm confident that you'll even be hunted by the Eternity Sky Emperor and the Jade Drop Emperor. Two supreme rulers hunting a mountain river tier cultivator." This sounded funny, yet there was a genuine possibility that it could happen. Who didn't know that these two emperors loved and admired Empress Luan Xing? They had even indicated that they were willing to give her their respective majestic empires as dowry if she were willing to marry them. And now, the goddess in their hearts had been indecently assaulted by another man. How could they not sentence him to death? Ling Han counted using his fingers. With a chuckle, he said, "How many heavenly body tier elites have I offended now?" Shui Yenyu could only roll her eyes at him. Perhaps Ling Han was the only mountain river tier cultivator in the world who could attract the attention of so many heavenly body tier elites. This left her both speechless and in admiration. Which other mountain river tier cultivator could achieve this? Even Sun Moon tier elites didn't have the right to be remembered by so many heavenly body tier elites, much less a small mountain river tier cultivator. The two of them continued forward. After experiencing this life and death situation together, the feelings between them naturally became even stronger. They occasionally exchanged a sweet and loving glance. Thus, they didn't feel bored as they walked, as their hearts would be filled with warmth whenever they glanced at their lover. Just like before, they sent the Azura Demon Emperor to fight those they could defeat. If they came across an opponent that they couldn't, they would avoid them or go into hiding for a while. Although the giant fish here were powerful, they didn't possess intelligence, as they were unable to cultivate. Thus, it didn't matter even if they discovered the secret of the Black Tower. A dozen or so days passed, and a tower appeared in their sights. It was a golden tower with 9 levels, yet its height was such that it towered above the surface of the sea. It was extremely magnificent. There were people entering the bottom level, yet there were also those who tried to enter the second and third levels. However, these people were all blasted back by a bolt of lightning when they neared the tower. Some were killed, while others were severely wounded. It was evident that those who weren't strong enough couldn't enter from the higher levels of the tower. They could only enter from the bottom level. "Let's check it out," Ling Han said. The 2 people and 1 puppet walked over. The entrance on the bottom level of the tower was insanely big, with a height of 300 meters and a width of around 150 meters. It was large enough for several hundred people to enter at the same time. Ling Han walked in, and the Azura Demon Emperor transformed into a small orb that was put away by Ling Han. This was to prevent him from having his identity exposed. His behavior didn't conform to that of a puppet, after all. "Brother Ling." He heard someone shout at him. Ling Han turned around, only to see that Xiao Sisi, Duan, and the others had already arrived. Of course, the hateful Xia Wuque was also present. Apart from these 4 young king tier cultivators, there were also another 3 people present. Their auras were just as powerful. Come, let's introduce each other, Duan said with a smile. He pointed at Ling Han and said, "This is Ling Han, brother Ling, the only person who was able to pass the stone statue formation." Upon hearing this, a stunned expression appeared on the 3 people's faces. They couldn't help but stare at Ling Han. They hadn't challenged the stone statue formation, as they had been traveling with the seniors from their clans before. They had indeed come across a stone statue formation. However, it had been either at the sun-moon tier or at the heavenly body tier. They hadn't even had the chance to challenge them. However, this didn't stop them from being aware of the terrifying nature of the stone statue formation. From what they knew, no one had been able to pass. Even the older generation of heavenly body tier elites had been defeated in the 6th and 7th stages. According to those elite speculations, if one wanted to pass the stone statue formation, they had not only to reach the pinnacle of a major tier, but also to have a battle prowess that surpassed at least 9 stars. Was this possible? However, there was an example of success right before their very eyes. How could they not be stunned and surprised? If it weren't Duan who had told them, they would have treated such claims as utter nonsense. Ling Han, these 3 are Quan Lishuan, Luo Jingren, and Guan Rong. We'll probably meet again soon at the Majestic Heaven sect. At that time, we'll be fellow apprentice brothers and sisters. Ling Han nodded, then clasped his hands, and said respectfully, "Greetings, everyone." The 3 people didn't dare to show any disrespect. Judging by Ling Han's prodigious talent, his background was most likely no weaker than theirs. Thus, they were all extremely respectful toward him. Meanwhile, Xia Wuque sneered in disdain. He felt that Ling Han looked even more detestable now. Being as smart as Quan Lishuan and the other 2 were, they instantly understood that there was animosity between Ling Han and Xia Wuque. However, their backgrounds were no weaker than that of Xia Wuque, and thus they naturally didn't need to distance themselves from Ling Han out of fear of Xia Wuque. "You guys arrived first, so did you figure out what's up with this tower?" Ling Han asked. Brother Ling came just in time. We just happen to be forming a team now, Su Jing said with a smile. Meanwhile, Xiao Sisi started to explain the situation, saying, "People need to form teams of 10 in order to enter this tower. Moreover, all team members need to have the same cultivation level 1. Also, the entire team will be eliminated once any single member of the team fails. Not only that, but there's only one opportunity as well." Ling Han nodded in understanding. No wonder these prodigies were all waiting here. They wanted to ensure that they succeeded. One prodigy mightn't necessarily be strong enough to carry 9 weaker team members. This wouldn't matter if they could start again after failing. After all, they could gain experience from their failure. However, this tower only gave people 1 chance to enter. They would be barred from entering again if they failed the first time. Thus, it was no surprise that everyone was especially careful. "What do we get for passing the trial of this tower?" Ling Han asked. Xia Wuque sneered again. What a sordid person who only thinks of benefits and whatnot. Don't you think that the goal of supreme prodigies is to complete feats that others cannot? No idea, Xiao Sisi said with a shake of her head. Those who failed have already come out. They can stay here to observe, but they can't form another team to try again. There are also some people who haven't reappeared yet. Perhaps they've entered the 2nd, 3rd, or even 9th level. Ling Han smiled, and said, "Then what are we waiting for? Let's go." Chapter 11-12, Shadow. Xiao Sisi, Xia Wuque, and the 5 other people could all be regarded as some of the most powerful cultivators of this galaxy's younger generation. If the 7 of them teamed up, 3 of them would be enough. They would be able to look after 2 people each, yet they would still have quite a good chance of carrying their remaining team members through the tower. The trial in this tower was probably similar to the trial of the stone statue formation. Those at the mountain river tier definitely wouldn't come across dangers at the sun-moon tier. Otherwise, that would be an execution, not a trial. To them, bringing 2 people each wouldn't pose a problem. The reason for their gathering was in order to get to know each other. After all, they were all destined to enter the majestic heaven sect. At that time, the advantage of their backgrounds would drop significantly. Thus, it was advantageous for them to acquaint themselves with more prodigies. Hehe, let's go. With the addition of Ling Han and Shui Yanyu and counting the spear-wielding man in as well, their team had already reached 10 members. Right now, they were standing before an eerily dark entrance. This was the entrance of the bottom level. If a team didn't have 10 members, they would be blocked at this entrance. They entered the bottom level together. Their surroundings instantly changed. They were in a spacious hall that had gigantic and towering columns. Unlike the entrance, this hall wasn't dark. This was because the columns were radiating with light. Master, little Azura can't move, the Azura Demon Emperor suddenly exclaimed. Little Azura's been trapped in this puppet, and I can't even move a finger. Ling Han nodded in his mind. Sure enough, there was a limit of 10 people per team. Moreover, there was a limit on their cultivation level as well. Thus, he naturally couldn't use puppets. Otherwise, it would be far too unfair. He retrieved his Vajra seal and lion seal, and sure enough, these 2 divine seals had also become dull and lifeless. It was clear that they couldn't be used. By the looks of it, it was impossible to use items above the mountain river tier in this tower, regardless of whether they were god tools or divine seals. Ling Han was slightly puzzled. If this tower was a spirit tool, then its tool spirit was far too intelligent. Detestable fake. Small tower grumbled in displeasure. It was extremely proud, and it couldn't accept other tower-shaped god tools. Be careful, everyone. Duan warned. Although there were 8 supreme prodigies here, they still had 2 items of baggage, after all. If either of these 2 people were defeated, the entire team would suffer. Are there any dangers here? Xia Wuque unleashed a burst of origin power that surged out like a water ripple. This burst of origin power didn't possess any offensive ability, and was merely a way to probe the surroundings. This place restricted one's divine sense, after all. However, one could still probe distant locations if they used their origin power as a feeler. A serious expression appeared on his face. He pointed at a corner, and said, "There's something there." The 10 of them walked over together. When they arrived near the corner, the first thing that they saw was a pool of blood. Then, they saw a corpse that had been ripped into 6 pieces. By the looks of the corpse, this person was probably attacked by a large demonic beast, Duan said as he collected a drop of blood to examine. Their resistance had been futile when they were struck by a claw, and their body was instantly ripped into pieces. The time of their death was under 30 minutes ago. Which means this person entered with a team just then, Xiao Sisi said as she nodded. A solemn expression appeared on their faces. A danger that was unknown was the greatest danger. We won't pass if we just stand here. Let's keep going. They continued to walk forward. Everyone still talked in the beginning as they had just met each other. However, their shallow relationships also meant that there was little for them to talk about, and they quickly ran out of topics. They eventually fell silent, and all that could be heard was the soft sound of their steps. The light radiating from the columns shone onto their bodies, creating long and drawn-out shadows that moved as they walked. Ling Han was bored, and he started counting the shadows on the ground to pass time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 10, 11. Hang on. He faltered for a moment before the astonishment suddenly hit him. Why are there 11 shadows? There are clearly only 10 of us. The 11th shadow signifies that someone joined our group without our detection. This realization made his head go numb with apprehension. 8 members of their team were supreme prodigies, yet none of them had detected this uninvited guest. Ling Han had only noticed because he had been counting their shadows out of boredom. Stop for a moment, he said. Everyone stopped where they were. However, they were all feeling a little confused. They had been walking smoothly, so why had Ling Han suddenly called for them to stop? What's wrong? Xia Wuque asked impatiently. In reality, he didn't want to be in the same team as Ling Han. Although Shui Yanyu was also brought closer to him as a result, there was a person that he detested between the two of them. Thus, it was pointless even if she was here. Ling Han waved his hand dismissively. If it weren't for the fact that only teams of 10 could pass, he definitely wouldn't bother with this person at all. He swept his gaze around, and his expression changed drastically. What's wrong? Shui Yanyu hurriedly asked. There are only 10 people here. Ling Han stammered with some difficulty. Brother Ling, are you a little too tense? Quan Lishuan said with a chuckle. He had spoken politely in order to give Ling Han some face. If it had been someone else, he would have immediately scolded them. What was there to be astonished about? If there weren't 10 people, would there perhaps be 9 people? Or would 11 make you happier? Right now, he had genuinely become suspicious. Could someone like this pass the stone statue formation? Strange. Ling Han looked at the ground again, and his expression changed even more. Guys, count the number of shadows on the floor. Ling Han, have you had enough yet? Xia Wuque roared. He had already been displeased with Ling Han to begin with, and thus he was naturally even more ticked off now. The others remained silent, yet their expressions had already exposed their thoughts. Hang on. Xiao Cici's expression also changed drastically, and she said, look at the shadows on the ground. The others finally looked at the ground after hearing her repeat Ling Han's words. Their expressions also changed drastically. There were 11 shadows. How was this possible? There were clearly 10 of them, so how could there be an 11th shadow? They had to be seeing things. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the others all started to count the number of team members. However, there were only 10 of them no matter how they counted. Meanwhile, there were 11 shadows on the ground. Ling Han composed himself and said, everyone, move. The others nodded and raised their arm. The shadows on the ground also mimicked their actions. The problem was, all 11 shadows did the same. Do it one by one. Ling Han raised his arm first, and only one of the shadows mimicked his action. The others raised their arm one after another. The second person, third, fourth, fifth, eighth, ninth, 10th. Shwa. Everyone looked toward the shadow that hadn't moved from beginning to end. Die. Ling Han unsheathed his divine demon sword and activated it with his origin power. Wisps of auras flowed down, each of them as heavy as a mountain. At the same time, flames surged into the air and transformed into a firebird. These were the divine patterns of gravity and divine patterns of flames that Ling Han possessed. He had inscribed them into his divine demon sword, and at this moment, he had activated both of them together. Boom! Sword light flashed about like a rain of arrows. Everyone instantly looked over, only to see that the number of shadows on the ground had already become 10 again. That mysterious shadow had disappeared, and they couldn't find it anywhere. Chapter 11-13, Ghostly Shadow. Although they were all prodigies, they couldn't help but feel their heads go numb with fear and their hearts beat in intense palpitation. A shadow had suddenly disappeared before their very eyes. They had all been staring at it intently, yet their attacks had created a large and instantaneous fluctuation. This affected their senses slightly, creating a minuscule time gap during which the shadow suddenly disappeared. It's all your fault. Xia Wuque shouted, his finger pointed at Ling Han. There was a look of blame on his face, and he said, if you hadn't tried to play the hero and attacked, we wouldn't have lost sight of that mysterious shadow. He had been displeased with Ling Han to begin with, and he was simply finding an excuse to criticize him now. Shui Yanyu flared up in anger, and said indignantly, if it hadn't been for Ling Han's warning, you wouldn't have even known that there was a shadow stalking us. Xia Wuque was a prodigy, after all, and he already knew that he had no chance of getting together with Shui Yenyu. Thus, he naturally severed his feelings of love and admiration of her. As a member of the team, one naturally has to act in the best interests of the team, Xia Wuque said with a humph. However, this person is completely full of himself. Who here doesn't have a more powerful offensive ability than him? Was there a need for him to attack? Now we've let that mysterious shadow escape. Ling Han was also ticked off, and he said, "I'll beat the hell out of you when we get out." Xia Wuque chuckled coldly. When they got out, the only person getting beaten would be Ling Hainanli. His physique and recovery ability were powerful, so weren't these to prepare him for a good beating? "I'll be waiting," he replied. "Hee, let's concentrate on how to find that shadow first," Luo Jingren said. He walked over to defuse the situation. This had nothing to do with him, but they were all team members now, so any incidents would end up affecting the entire team. Su Jing pondered for a moment, and asked, "Have you guys heard of any existence that has no physical body and only a shadow?" Everyone shook their heads. Such a being seemed far too eerie and sinister. Let's just forget about this for the moment. Our aim is just to make it through this place. When we're close to succeeding, that mysterious shadow will definitely reappear to attack us, Duan said. Everyone agreed with Duan's suggestion. If the aim of that mysterious shadow was to obstruct them from passing this tower, it would definitely reappear to attack them. If not, then they wouldn't need to worry about it anyway. In any case, their priority was to make it through this place. They started to advance forward again. This time, however, everyone kept their eyes on the shadows that were flittering about on the ground. The only light source here was the columns, and because of this, their shadows would change every time they passed by a column. After some time, the number of shadows on the ground suddenly changed again. The 10 people instantly stopped in their tracks. This was just as they expected. The number of shadows on the ground had increased again. Moreover, there were 12, not 11, shadows. Fuck. The ghost shadow has friends? Shui Yenyu involuntarily shuffled closer to Ling Han. She was a female, and thus she was inherently afraid of such kinds of unknown. In any case, her lover was by her side, and this caused her to unknowingly become reliant upon him. None of them acted rashly. This was because they hadn't determined which 2 shadows were the ghost shadows yet. Spread apart. Everyone distanced themselves from each other. Now that they were spread apart, the 2 shadows couldn't hide in the group of shadows anymore. Instead, they would stick out like sore thumbs. Die. The 10 of them attacked in unison, all of them unleashing their full strength. Pung. It's there. Ling Han activated his Eye of Truth and locked onto a shadow. He then sprinted after it in pursuit. This ghostly shadow had an agile transformation ability. It had still been as large as their shadows just a moment ago, yet now that it was fleeing, it had transformed into a tiny black dot. It was so tiny that it was barely noticeable. It was no wonder that they had let it escape before. Lin Han stabbed with his sword, and the divine demon sword instantly transformed into a streak of light. He had already activated the fast technique, and this made his divine demon sword travel at a speed so fast that it was indescribable. Pooh! The tip of his sword struck the tiny black dot, and it surprisingly felt as if he had struck a physical body. Ling Han shook his sword, causing tremendous power to surge through it and obliterate the tiny black dot. Countless wisps of black aura instantly rose into the air. In fact, there were even shrill and ear-piercing screeches traveling out from the auras. No, these weren't sounds, but divine sense. They traveled into Ling Han's mind and sought to plant conflict within him. Humph. Trying to destabilize my divine sense? This was a joke. If one wanted to affect Ling Han's divine sense, they needed to be many cultivation levels above him. Even those at the consummate level of the mountain river tier wouldn't be able to inflict damage to Ling Han's divine sense. Under the tempering of the indestructible heaven scroll, his divine sense had already become incredibly tough. Like floodwater meeting a dam, the ear-piercing screeches were instantly reflected back. A look of surprise appeared on Ling Han's face. This kind of attacker, this type of form, to be more precise, appeared especially familiar to him. Shwa. The wisps of black aura regathered to form a shadow again. Then, the shadow ferociously lashed out with its arms. Chung, chung, chung. Like saber blades, 5 razor-sharp claws sprung out from its hand. Humph. Paltry tricks. Guan Rong just happened to be beside Ling Han, and he naturally wasn't willing to let Ling Han steal all the thunder. He immediately swung a fist toward the shadow. There were a whopping 60 divine patterns on his fist, and this caused his arm to become like an unparalleled god tool. Pung! His fist collided with the ghostly shadow's claws. The divine patterns on his fist lit up, and the strike from the ghostly shadow was instantly blocked. In fact, the ghostly shadow was even sent flying by his strike. It was clear that the ghostly shadow was no match for Guan Rong, both in terms of power and in terms of battle prowess. Guan Rong's strike had been effective, and this caused his confidence to shoot through the roof. The unknown was the most terrifying. Now that this ghostly shadow had displayed strength that was at the high extreme of the mountain river tier at most, it merely appeared strange. As such, Guan Rong naturally didn't need to be overly cautious anymore. However, similar to Ling Han, this ghostly shadow also possessed an astonishing recovery ability. Black aura whirled about, and it instantly recovered its original form. Then, it immediately lashed out with its claws again. Its body flashed about as a cold glint reflected off its claws, and it appeared much like a god of death. At this moment, everyone finally understood that the corpses from before hadn't been ripped apart by demonic beasts. Rather, they had been ripped apart by this ghostly shadow. It could slice people into 6 pieces with a single strike, and added to the fact that it had a potentially undying body, it definitely couldn't be underestimated. Ling Han followed up Guan Rong's strike by unleashing his 7-kill subduing soul technique. Ah! An agonized wail instantly traveled into everyone's mind. This was the howl of the ghostly shadow. The ghostly shadow couldn't maintain its original shape anymore, and it continually shifted into different forms. It transformed into a human figure for a while, then into a beast figure, then into a fish figure, and then into a bird figure. In the end, it became a mess of shapes. It appeared as if it were on the brink of collapse. As expected. Ling Han nodded in his mind. This ghostly appeared to be unafraid of physical attacks, and it had been able to immediately recover after being smashed apart. However, it was extremely vulnerable against divine sense attacks. Guan Rong laughed heartily, and said, "So it turns out that it was afraid of divine sense attacks. Humph. Witness the power of my spirit-refining swords." Xia Wuque shook his arms, and countless golden swords flew out from his eyes. These weren't physical, but instead formed from his divine sense. Xiao, xiao, xiao. Tens of thousands of swords surged outward, and the other ghostly shadow was naturally unable to escape. It was pinned to a column by the golden swords. It shrieked in agony, and its figure transformed rapidly. It twisted about for a moment, and then eventually vanished into nothingness. Chapter 11-14, Shadow-Eating Tribe. Xia Wuque couldn't help but smile smugly. He and Ling Han had both unleashed divine sense attacks, yet he had been able to insta-kill the shadow, while Ling Han had only managed to severely wound it. This showed the gap in strength between their divine senses. Ling Han glanced at him, and a sense of scorn involuntarily formed in his mind. He hadn't used his full strength while unleashing the 7-kill subduing soul technique just then, as he had wanted to gauge how strong ghostly shadows were. Thus, he naturally had to raise the power of the 7-kill subduing soul technique bit by bit. In Xia Wuque's eyes, however, this was a display of Ling Han's weakness. Ling Han didn't want to argue with him. When their team dissolved after they left this place, he would definitely beat this person up. He would let Xia Wuque know that he had merely been embarrassing himself by bragging so shamelessly. "What's this?" Xiao Sisi asked. She was a beautiful woman, and thus she didn't mind appearing a little clueless. After all, this wouldn't cause the others to look down on her. On the contrary, men weren't inclined to ask questions even if they didn't understand something. This was especially so if one were among a group of prodigies. Who didn't want face? Everyone remained silent. This was because none of them knew what this was. Ling Han pondered for a moment before saying, "Perhaps this isn't a being from the immortal realm." "What?" the others all shouted in surprise. What could it be if it wasn't a being from the immortal realm? Ling Han, stop trying to frighten everyone. Xia Wuque scolded. Ling Han couldn't even be bothered to look at him. If I'm not wrong, this is probably a being from the netherworld. This ghostly shadow reminded him of the Azura Demon Emperor. Neither of them had a physical body, and both of them possessed the ability to attack using their divine sense. In addition, their divine sense was both weak. It was just that this ghostly shadow didn't appear to possess sentience. Anna Marie merely knew how to launch some attacks in a mechanical manner. Otherwise, if this shadow were the as powerful Azura Demon Emperor, how could it charge over to hand them its life on a silver platter? The netherworld. A solemn expression appeared on the prodigies' faces. They were very fortunate that the barrier between the two realms was extremely secure in this galaxy. As a result, they didn't need to fight off any invasions from the netherworld. They had merely heard of the netherworld's existence. Meanwhile, the Venerable Trinity was someone who had returned from the two-realm battlefield. Even a powerful person like him hadn't been able to exterminate the intruders from the netherworld. From this, it could be seen just how powerful the netherworld was. "Brother Ling, are you sure?" Su Jing asked with a serious expression. If a being from the netherworld had truly appeared here, this would be a tremendous problem. Although the ghostly shadow had been weak, it would be extremely likely that there were more powerful beings from the netherworld lurking around. This meant that there was a possibility of a two-realm passageway existing in their galaxy. If that were the case, they would need to battle. They would need to engage in a battle of immense proportions. Ling Han shook his head, and said, "I'm only guessing as well. Moreover, even if this being is genuinely from the netherworld, that doesn't imply that there must be a two-realm passageway in our galaxy. Perhaps the owner of this tomb brought it over from some other place." This was extremely likely. Ling Han had witnessed the extreme narcissism of the tomb owner, who had replicated a stone statue formation after passing through a similar one in some puppet sect. With that in mind, it wouldn't be surprising if the tomb owner had killed many elites of the netherworld in the two-realm battlefield and also captured some to bring over here to show off his might and greatness. It was just that the tomb owner should have been dead for countless years already. Even if he had truly captured beings from the netherworld and brought them over, could they really have survived for this long? Ling Han shook his head. He couldn't make heads nor tails of the situation, at least not now. There was no need for him to waste any more time on this. The ghostly shadow had been a little muddle-headed, and it clearly didn't possess any intelligence. This was evident from how it had been tailing Ling Han and the others just then. That had been an extremely childish act. Thus, they naturally wouldn't be able to get any answers from the ghostly shadows themselves. That being the case, they immediately launched divine sense attacks to exterminate the remaining ghostly shadows. These beings were especially strange, and after they were killed, they transformed into mist that would eventually dissipate. They didn't leave any corpse. Ling Han used his divine sense to communicate with the Azura Demon Emperor and ask him questions. He was a genuine native of the netherworld. After listening to Ling Han's account, the Azura Demon Emperor hurriedly replied, "According to Master's description, I'm 90% certain that those were beings from the netherworld. They're called the Shadow-Eating Tribe." Shadow-Eating Tribe? Ling Han asked in surprise. "That's right, these beings feed on shadows," the Azura Demon Emperor said. "Moreover, they can absorb someone's life essence by swallowing their shadow. They're formless killers. However, the ghostly shadows that Master spoke of are clearly a bit strange. It appears as if they've lost their sentience and awareness. They simply attach themselves to others' shadows by instinct, and they didn't cause any tangible damage." Ling Han nodded in agreement. Those shadows were most likely members of the shadow-eating tribe. However, their awareness had already been severed by the tomb owner, and thus they even lost their ability to feed. They were simply left with an instinctive hobby of following shadows. "Let's continue," Quan Lishuan said in a haughty voice. "Who cares if those ghostly shadows are from the netherworld or not? They're fairly weak anyway, and we can deal with them in no time at all." Indeed, divine sense attacks were extremely effective and damaging toward ordinary living beings. Quan Lishuan and the others were all descendants of super-powerful forces, so it was only natural that they all possessed secret techniques to cultivate their divine sense. Thus, not only did they possess a powerful divine sense, but they also possessed the ability to launch divine sense attacks. As such, they held no fear of the ghostly shadows that roamed this place. They set off again, and after a short while, the shadows on the ground increased again. They were prepared this time, so they weren't afraid in the least. They attacked together and obliterated all of the ghostly shadows. In fact, it wasn't only divine sense attacks that could wound these ghostly shadows. Flames, lightning, and other attack methods could also threaten the lives of these shadows. It was just that they weren't as effective as divine sense attacks. Meanwhile, these ghostly shadows were least afraid of direct physical attacks. A clear example of this was the Azura Demon Emperor, who had still managed to live for 100,000 years even though he had been separated into 9 pieces. So this level is actually this easy to pass. After walking for a while, they arrived before a giant metal door. It was extremely likely that this signified the end of the first level. Everyone wore a faint smile. To ordinary mountain river tier cultivators, this level wouldn't be easy to pass. This was because the ghostly shadows came and went without a sound. Moreover, apart from the descendants of super-powerful forces, how many people practiced secret techniques pertaining to divine sense attacks? Thus, if it were some other team, this level would definitely be incredibly challenging to pass. Hold on. Only upon arriving closer did they discover that there was a gigantic demonic beast lying before the giant metal door. They had failed to see it before as the color of its scales was far too similar to that of the tiles on the floor. This demonic beast. It was extremely difficult to describe its appearance. This was because it was lying on the floor at the moment, and this made it look like a flat piece of rug. Is this demonic beast guarding the door? It looks like we have to defeat it. Let's probe its strength first. Xiao Sisi smiled faintly, and said, "I'll try first." She retrieved a set of bow and arrows. The bow was decorated with several divine patterns, and the arrows were too. This was a set of god tools. So it turns out that Lady Xiao is also an expert in archery, the others praised. They were also a little fearful at the same time. Experts in archery could launch attacks from incredibly long distances, and it was mighty difficult to defend against such attacks. "I only know a bit about archery," Xiao Sisi said modestly. She drew her bow. Wang. The divine patterns on the bow and arrow lit up, exuding a domineering aura. Everyone's heart shuddered. The might of this arrow couldn't be underestimated. Even they would have to be especially careful if they came up against such an attack. If they were caught off guard, it was extremely likely that they would be hit by this attack. Chapter 11:15, The Tiger That Guards the Door. Xiao, the sharp arrow shot out. This arrow was incredibly fast, turning into a streak of light that rapidly shot towards that strange demonic beast. Ling Han nodded internally. This shot might not be as powerful as the annihilating dragon star arrow, but the gap wasn't very large. However, if he shot the annihilating dragon star arrow with this bow and arrow, the might would definitely be even stronger. If he shot out the ultimate arrow, it would be even more so. Ding! The arrow arrived, releasing a series of fiery sparks, and then bounced back. The demonic beast seemed to have been startled awake, and suddenly stood up. It was like someone suddenly grabbing a rug in the middle part, and then picked it up, making for a very bizarre sight. But in the process of rising, the form of this demonic beast was also changing. It actually turned from a thin rug into a fierce tiger. It was 30 meters long and 15 meters tall. It was completely crimson, and the fur on its neck seemed to be burning, displaying its awe-inspiring presence. Everyone watched this with shock, not because of the appearance of the demonic beast, but rather because this shot from Xiao Sisi had actually not had the slightest effect. This was extremely astonishing. The abilities of demonic beasts are beyond our expectations. What should we do? Force our way in? How about we first have a few of us draw this demonic beast away, then open the large doors, and we go together afterwards? This is not a bad idea. It is obviously meaningless to continue wasting our time here. Everyone nodded. After a discussion, they decided to have Duan, Quan Lishuan, and Su Jing draw the demonic beast away, whereas the remaining number would be responsible for opening the doors. They were all geniuses of the present era. Since they had already laid out a plan, they would naturally proceed according to their plan to the letter, not hesitating in the slightest. Ugly, come chase us. The trio began to provoke it, but that demonic beast merely lay there lazily, ignoring them completely. Just like it had not pursued them when it had been shot earlier, it was so lazy that it practically raised their hackles in anger. Duan and his group quickly made their moves, blasting out stream after stream of origin power towards that demonic beast. At first, the demonic beast was too lazy to care, but when it had been hit many times, it finally lost its patience. With a roar, it charged towards the three of them. This pounce was extraordinarily fast. Duan and his group fled in different directions, using the terrain in this place to play a game of hide and seek with this demonic beast. Ling Han and the others rushed out too, and began to barrage the doors. Pung! 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 Large bangs sounded out continuously, but what shocked them was that these doors were so sturdy they seemed unbreakable. Everyone used their respective ultimate moves, but no matter how powerful their attacks were, even normal cultivators at the peak stage of the consummate level of Mountain River tier would be insta-kill were completely useless against these big doors. We can't open it at all. They had no choice but to admit that in the face of these doors, their power was just like an ant trying to shake a tree, unable to move the ladder in the slightest. Xiao Sisi, who was a careful person, suddenly pointed at that demonic beast as she exclaimed, "Look at the neck of that tiger." Everyone turned their heads and saw that there actually seemed to be a key hanging around the neck of that demonic beast. Looks like we must defeat this fierce tiger, and take that key to open these doors. We cannot use shortcuts. Then, let us call Brother Du and the others back, and battle with our full effort. All of them were heroic characters. Previously, they'd chosen to draw the tiger away only because they had not wanted to waste their time, but now that their only option was to battle, they feared nothing. Shui Yenyu and the spear-wielding man stepped back to one side. In this kind of battle, they could not possibly interfere, or it would be merely seeking their own deaths. That was because this demonic tiger was very powerful. If that had not been the case, Duan and the others would not have needed to draw it away, and would have only had to trap it on one side. They sent out a signal for Duan and the others to return. Huh! Duan and his group all circled back, and when they saw that the big doors were still tightly locked, they couldn't help but be curious. There is no need to ask. We can't open these doors at all, we need the key hanging on the neck of that demonic beast, Guan Rong explained. Huh, then we just have to fight. Duan and his group were also not the slightest bit afraid. The 8 great prodigies stood together to receive the demonic tiger that was racing back towards them. The strength of this demonic tiger was a little inconceivable. There were actually as many as 80 divine patterns on its body. What kind of concept was this? It was equivalent to an 8-star genius. Furthermore, as it was at the peak stage of the consummate level of Mountain River tier in the first place, added with the power of 8 stars, it was so incredibly powerful that none would dare to befriend it. No wonder there was a need for 10 to form a team. Though Ling Han and the others were all prodigies among prodigies, fighting this demonic beast, they would only be defeated. Theoretically, the number of 10 would be able to compensate for the gap of a single star in battle prowess. After all, these prodigies had not yet formed their fifth mountain river, so against this demonic beast, they were practically at a loss for what to do. Come on. All 8 were confident. Aside from Ling Han, the other 6 had reached the peak stage of the consummate level of mountain river tier, their power reaching as high as 6 stars, and added with the secret techniques they knew, their battle prowess was at least 7 stars. The battle prowess they showed when using their ultimate moves would definitely be capable of reaching 8 stars. Hence, there was still quite a high chance that they would win the battle. I'll focus on the front, Ling Han said. This gained the complete agreement of Xiao Sisi, Su Jing and Duan. Though Xia Wuque was very displeased, he did not object. They all knew that the toughness of Ling Han's physique was far superior to theirs, so he was the best choice to be the main assault on the front. Quan Lishuan and the others, meanwhile, had never witnessed Ling Han's defenses, and were slightly surprised. A cultivator in the high extreme of mountain river tier was going to take the front? But even Xia Wuque had not objected, so they naturally could only choose to trust him. Ling Han drew out the divine demon sword, and after awakening its power, immediately charged towards the demonic tiger. Pung! The demonic tiger waved a paw, and suddenly slapped down on Ling Han. Its power was too strong, almost reaching the true apex of mountain river tier. Ling Han was completely unqualified to stand strong against an attack of this strength. Wah! He spat out a mouthful of blood, and couldn't help but be depressed. Previously, he had been sucked dry by Empress Wan Xing. He had just recovered a little with much difficulty. Now, he was forced to throw up blood from an attack. Did the world have some kind of grudge against him? This attack caused a few of his bones to be dislocated, but Ling Han's origin power merely trembled, and his bones naturally went back to their appropriate positions. He bounced off his feet, and once again charged over. Using the fast technique, his offensive was like a wave. Quan Lishuan and the others watched on, dumbfounded. Being smacked with such powerful strength, Yu Fuck came off unscathed. What kind of freak were you? However, though Ling Han's physique was freakish, that demonic beast was no ordinary character either. Under Ling Han's multiple slashes and attacks, it also appeared to be similarly unharmed as if it was indestructible like diamond. This was really inconceivable. Previously, it had transformed into a rug, being extremely soft, but now, it seemed to be like high-grade godly metal, being incredibly hard. How could these two completely opposing traits possibly appear on the same body? The demonic beast pounced, its battle prowess powerful, appearing to be almighty. Ling Han restrained it up front, and the 7 of them attacked with their full effort. However, every attack was a waste of energy. The freakishly high defenses of this demonic tiger had even surpassed Ling Han's. This is definitely not a demonic beast, but rather a puppet. Ling Han concluded. He had possessed such a physique only through cultivating the indestructible heaven scroll, so how could it be matched by any random creature that crossed their path? However, if this demonic beast was really a puppet built from godly metal, it would be understandable. One would only need to use level 5 godly metal to build this puppet, and the defenses were naturally not something that could be resolved by mountain river tier. This would also explain why its strength was so powerful. Chapter 11:16, Want a reward? It should be a puppet. Otherwise, one would have needed to form the 5th mountain river to reach 8 stars of power. If it had really formed the 5th mountain river, I do not believe such a being would agree to being a guard of the door here. But if it really is a puppet, what do we do? Puppets had no vital points, knew no pain, and aside from the fact that their brains were a little dumb, they were practically a perfect fighting machine, and there was no way around them. They had more or less confirmed this. This demonic tiger's defenses had surpassed the limits of mountain river tier, and it was already invincible by nature, so how were they supposed to defeat it? Ling Han pondered for a moment, and then answered, there are 2 possibilities. Firstly, there is a limit to the amount of time a puppet can move. We would only need to persist for a certain amount of time, and it would naturally stop attacking. And secondly, we do not have to destroy the puppet, but merely take the key. The others nodded respectively. This could not possibly be irresolvable, or it would have lost the meaning of existence. Let's take the key. They immediately came to a decision. It was very simple. Even if this demonic tiger had a limit to the amount of time it could move, they did not know how long that period of time would be. Hence, it was naturally best for them to take the key, and this was also the crux of their problem. Brother Ling and I will be responsible for drawing the attention of this demonic tiger, and you guys take the chance to snatch the key, Xiao Sisi said. She once again drew out her bow and arrow, and aimed right at the eyes of the demonic tiger, shooting arrow after arrow. So rich. Usually, Ling Han could not bear to use the godly arrows he had obtained, because there were only so many of them. The moment he shot them out and did not manage to retrieve them, that would mean one less arrow in his possession. Xiao Sisi, on the other hand, continued to shoot arrow after arrow without stop, and she did not look like she had the slightest intention of retrieving them. He really had no idea exactly how many arrows she had actually brought. As expected of the princess of the Thousand Frost majestic empire, rich and imposing. Ling Han sighed, and cheered himself up to continue to stand strong against this demonic tiger on the front line to gain time and create an opening for the others. Duan and the others, meanwhile, began attacking the collar that had the key hanging from it. After a few times, they looked immensely pleased because though the collar was also very sturdy, it was not unbreakable. With this, their confidence naturally increased greatly, and they were strongly on the offensive. After a few hundred attacks, the collar was finally broken. However, this was only a collar, and it was useless for them to just create a hole in it. It was still firmly hanging on the neck of this demonic tiger, so they had to create another hole on the other side. Only then would the collar finally drop. Fuck, can you guys get a move on? Ling Han gritted his teeth. He was enduring all the firepower from the demonic beast. Those were the attacks of a being at the peak stage of the consummate level with 8 stars of strength. That was practically about Sun-Moon tier level, and even if his physique was comparable to level 4 godly metal, he could not hold on much longer. If it were not for the effects of the indestructible heaven scroll, continuously healing his body, he would have been killed who knew how many times over. We're close. Even Xiao Sisi had joined the team that was attacking the collar. She shot out arrow after arrow, and they were all hitting the same place. Because none of them would dare fight this demonic tiger at close quarters, they could only shoot out sword rays, saber rays, fist rays, and other such long-distance attacks. Their power was naturally slightly weaker, which also caused severing the collar take a considerably long amount of time. After close to an hour had passed, a ding was heard. The collar had finally been broken in half, and while the upper half was still stuck on the neck of the demonic tiger, the lower half had already dropped down. And on it, the key was attached. Ling Han hurriedly retreated, creating some distance between himself and the demonic tiger, whereas the others took advantage of the opening to pick the key up and rushed towards those big doors. They pushed the key in, and after turning the key, the great doors slowly opened. Run! Ling Han called out at Shui Yanyu. It was necessary for all of them to pass through at this point, and even one less person would be considered as a failure. The 2 weaker ones of the bunch, Shui Yanyu and the spear-wielding man, left first, followed by Xiao Sisi and the others, whereas Ling Han tailed behind. He made use of the pillar and circled around it before turning right around to charge ahead of the demonic tiger, and leaped towards those big doors. Ong! The demonic tiger released a furious roar, and chased after him. Quick! Quick! At the entrance, Duan and the others were calling out anxiously. Even Xia Wuque and the spear-wielding man were no exceptions, and the demonic tiger was already approaching closer and closer behind him. Shua, the demonic tiger shot out a paw, and smacked it out at Ling Han. If it landed a solid hit, Ling Han would definitely be sent veering away from his original course, and thus smash into the wall on the side instead of charging out the big doors. Humph. Ling Han drew out the ultimate arrow. Though he was wielding himself like a bow, the might released was still very frightening. Origin power condensed, and turned into a stream of light that shot out. Pooh! The arrow of origin power landed on the paw of the demonic tiger, but facing what possibly could be defenses comparable to level 5 godly metal, even the ultimate arrow could not penetrate it. However, this was an attack that had Ling Han's full power behind it. With the frighteningly powerful impact, the tiger's paw still veered off slightly. This paw missed Ling Han by a hair's breadth. And Ling Han shot out, flying out the huge doors. Peng, he fell onto the ground, feeling weak all over. He had no way of regulating the might of this ultimate arrow. The moment he used it, he would definitely expend all the energy in his body, not leaving the slightest drop behind. Thankfully, as his cultivation level increased, the rate at which he recovered his power was also extremely fast. It would only be a matter of a few hours for him to recover completely. The demonic tiger stopped at the entrance, and did not pursue them out. It was as if an invisible wall was stopping it from going further. It roared for a while, and they saw the great doors slowly close, placing it firmly on the outside. The 10 of them sighed in relief. They had finally forced their way in. However, had they actually passed the first stage, or was it one of the tests of the first stage? They turned around, and looked around carefully. This was another great hall, and was an incredibly large one. In the center, there was a stone tablet standing upright. "Congratulations for passing the first stage," a voice suddenly spoke from the stone tablet. Everyone experienced a shock. Ho, don't be nervous. This is only a sliver of consciousness that I have left behind. As for the real me, I am not going to tell you, the stone tablet said. Merely a few words from it were enough to engender anyone's fury, making the 10 of them very much want to give it a good beating. Unfortunately, this was only a remaining sliver of consciousness, so how were they supposed to accomplish that? Ling Han was immediately sure that it must have been left behind by the owner of the tomb because it was extremely narcissistic and was practically asking to be beaten, having the same style as the message on the stone table that appeared when the stone statue formation concluded. However, this time, the tomb owner was playing a new trick, and actually left behind a sliver of divine sense to joke around. Want a reward? If you do, beg me, the stone tablet continued. They all looked at one another. Was this really a great senior and ultimate elite? Why did he seem to be quite shameless? Passing the first stage should have a reward, right? Ling Han deduced. Since that is so, then no matter if we beg or not, we would still be able to obtain the reward. So why should we beg then? I'm about to die of fury. What harm would it do if you begged me a little? Would you die from it? The stone tablet abruptly cried out. Everyone decided to simply remain silent by now. This great elite and senior seemed to be out of touch completely. Fine then. Rules are rules. I shall give you a little reward, then. The stone tablet calmed down, and its tone was much calmer than before. Chapter 11:17, Pummeling Wuque. Here, take it, brats, the stone tablet said. 10 jade vials materialized on the ground in a row. It was evident that there was 1 vial per person. This was a team victory, and thus everyone's reward was naturally the same. One wouldn't get a richer reward just because they contributed more to the victory. Everyone grabbed their vial of pills. However, Wuque had an advantage over everyone else. This was because the spear-wielding man was clearly his subordinate, meaning that he would have to give all of the benefits to Wuque. Ling Han grabbed a vial of pills and noticed that there was no label on the vial. He turned to the stone tablet and said, "May I ask what kind of pills these are?" "Purple Pattern Mountain River pills," the stone tablet answered. "What's that?" None of them had ever heard of this kind of pill before. After ingesting it, one's power will increase by 1 star for a period of 2 hours, the stone tablet explained. It's that trashy? Ling Han said in disappointment. Oi, you have to learn to be thankful after receiving something from others, the stone tablet said in displeasure. Moreover, you guys have only passed the first level. Did you expect some extremely valuable reward? So you're saying that we can still receive more rewards after passing the second, third, and other levels? Ling Han asked. That's right, as long as you guys are powerful enough, the stone tablet replied. Their fighting spirits were instantly ignited. They weren't motivated by the rewards per se, but rather by their unyielding ambitions and confidence as prodigies to become number one. What are the remaining levels like? Ling Han asked. Why should I tell you? The stone tablet countered. If you want to know, then go and experience them for yourself. However, I can tell you this: the second level is a labyrinth, and only those who navigate out of it within 2 hours will receive a reward. There's no need to form a team for this level. In fact, forming teams is forbidden. You guys can set off now. The stone tablet fell silent after saying this. A set of stairs that led to the second level appeared before them. Hee, let's go, Duan said with a smile. He was the first to walk toward the stairs. Ling Han didn't move. He found this situation to be particularly strange. This was a tomb, so why were there trials and challenges? Even if this old senior had left a wisp of his will, wouldn't it be better for him to guard his tomb? Why did he have to make it seem as if he were selecting disciples for a large sect? However, since there were rewards involved, Ling Han was still prepared to take part in these trials. There was nothing to lose, after all. Ling Han, didn't you want to fight me? Xia Wuque said, his finger pointed at Ling Han. Come at me. Ling Han was naturally unafraid. I won't kill you, since we have fought side by side just then. However, I'll have you know that there are always those who are stronger and more talented than you. Don't be too full of yourself. Who would have thought that Xia Wuque could utter such truthful words? Ling Han was slightly surprised. He had initially thought that Xia Wuque was a petty and narrow-minded person. To his surprise, he was actually open-minded to a certain degree. He pondered for a moment before saying, I'll also spare your life since you were able to utter such words. I'll simply have you understand the meaning of what you just said. Huh, how arrogant. Xia Wuque chuckled coldly, and said, let's fight. He roared softly, and over 60 divine patterns lit up on his hands. At the same time, 4 mountains and rivers materialized behind his back, each of them radiating with a terrifying aura. The fact that he possessed over 60 divine patterns signified that he had a power of 6 stars. You want to threaten me with such measly power? Ling Han said with a smile. It wasn't as if Xia Wuque hadn't seen his defenses before. Although 6 stars above the peak stage of the consummate level of the mountain river tier was indeed powerful, it still wasn't enough to defeat Ling Han. Of course this isn't all. Xia Wuque retrieved a black arm armor and wore it on his arm. He shook his arm, and the arm armor was instantly activated. The patterns that were carved into it lit up, and the number of divine patterns on his hand instantly increased dramatically. 71 divine patterns. This signified that his power had gone up another star. Ling Han was surprised, and he exclaimed, You didn't use this god tool when challenging the stone statue formation just then. It's not that I didn't want to use it. It's because this god tool is damaged and can only last for a quarter of an hour. Xia Wuque didn't hide the truth from Ling Han. It would definitely take far longer than 15 minutes to pass the stone statue formation, and thus he would have only been able to advance a short distance had he used it at that time. It definitely wouldn't have helped him pass the formation. Ling Han laughed loudly, and said, You're confident that you can defeat me within 15 minutes? It's more than enough. Xia Wuque said proudly. Although Ling Han's defenses were astonishing, Xia Wuque's power was already near the pseudo-sun-moon tier. After unleashing his secret techniques, it was even possible that he could kill Ling Han. I hope you can maintain your confidence, Ling Han said with a chuckle. He took out the lion's seal that he had received. This seal could be used a total of 10 times, though this upper limit might decrease depending on the period of time that it was activated during each use. His battle prowess was far weaker than that of Xia Wuque. This was inevitable due to the large gap in their cultivation level. If they fought without using external items, Ling Han would definitely be crushed. However, how could someone as proud as Ling Han accept the fate of being crushed? Thus, he resolutely decided to use the lion seal. He slapped the divine seal onto his body, and divine patterns instantly formed on his skin. At a rough glance, there were as many as 800 divine patterns. Pooh! Xia Wuque immediately spluttered loudly, his face painted with shock. He only possessed a tad over 70 divine patterns, yet Ling Han possessed a whopping 800. How big a difference was this? This wasn't simply a case of being 10 times stronger, but rather a case of being one major tier plus dozens of minor levels stronger. Even though he was a prodigy, could he defeat someone at the Sun-Moon tier? In any case, Ling Han's power wasn't simply at the Sun-Moon tier, it was at the consummate level of the Sun-Moon tier. I surrender, he said with a bitter expression. Ling Han flashed a smile, and said, do you think I'll stop just because you surrendered? I've already activated the lion seal, so how can I let you off like this? He charged over with his hands open, the divine patterns providing him with boundless power. Ling Han's power was already miles above that of Xia Wuque's, and thus there was no need for him to utilize any techniques. A simple grab was all it took for him to capture Xia Wuque. Afterward, he pummeled Xia Wuque to his heart's content. Although his impression of Xia Wuque had improved a tiny bit, it was only enough for him to spare Xia Wuque's life. He would still beat him regardless, and there was no need for him to hold back. You've gone too far. Xia Wuque wailed in agony. Ling Han ignored him and continued to dole out the punishment. The spear-wielding man was utterly stupefied by the scene playing out before him. In his eyes, Xia Wuque was an invincible god of war, unrivaled among those at the same cultivation level. Yet, right now, he was being mercilessly beaten by someone who was one minor level weaker than him. Regardless of what the reason was, the truth was the truth. Young King tier cultivators should have been invincible no matter what. Ling Han casually tossed Xia Wuque aside after beating him for a good while. Ling Han, I'll definitely wash my humiliation away when we meet at the Majestic Heaven sect. Xia Wuque shouted loudly. Ling Han laughed loudly, and said, you won't stand a chance. His cultivation was flying ahead, and the distance between his and Xia Wuque's cultivation level was only growing smaller and smaller. Moreover, the barrier between the Mountain River tier and Sun Moon tier was tremendously hard to overcome, so there was definitely a chance for him to catch up to Xia Wuque in the short term. Wife, let's go. Ling Han held Shui Yenyu's hand and walked toward the second level of the tower. Chapter 11:18, Invincible Paragon Saint. According to that unreliable stone tablet, the next trial is a labyrinth. Moreover, we can't form teams and can only attempt it ourselves. Do you want to enter the Black Tower? Ling Han asked. Shui Yenyu pondered for a moment before shaking her head, and saying, no, I want to attempt it myself. It might be dangerous, Ling Han warned. I know, Shui Yenyu said with a nod. Then, she turned to Ling Han, and earnestly said, I don't want to become a burden to you. I want to be able to help you. Ling Han felt moved upon feeling her love for him. However, what he said next was still quite out of touch. Then let's have kids first. Damn pervert. Shui Yenyu rolled her eyes at him. Ling Han laughed cheerily, and he stopped to pull her into an embrace. Be careful. I will. Ling Han pecked her on the forehead before striding into the second level. Shui Yenyu faltered for a moment. Then, she suddenly noticed that 2 divine seals had appeared in her pocket. They were none other than the Vajra seal and the lion seal. Before she could even speak, Ling Han had already disappeared behind the turn in the stairs. She hurriedly ran after him, yet she saw that he had already entered the second floor. Walls that were built from stone lay before her and stretched for a long distance. They appeared especially messy and disorderly. This was already the second floor of the tower, and she had become separated from Ling Han. This wasn't the first time that they had come across such a situation. When they entered this tomb, those at the Mountain River tier, Sun Moon tier, and Heavenly Body tier had already been separated from each other. She took the 2 divine seals out from her pocket. Ling Han had only left these with her because he was worried about her. Moreover, he was afraid that she would reject them, and thus he immediately ran off after stuffing them into her pocket. He gave her absolutely no chance to speak. Shui Yenyu stared at the divine seals absent-mindedly. Then, she remembered that Ling Han still had the Black Tower, meaning that he would probably be safe. Only then did she regain her senses and start to analyze the stone formation before her. Ling Han was also analyzing the stone formation in the same place, though it seemed as if he were in a different dimension. There was no doubt that this was the labyrinth. Huh. It can move. After studying the formation for a while, Ling Han discovered that the stone walls would move by themselves. As a result, the layout of the paths would completely change. We have to pass this labyrinth in under 2 hours. Do we have to find the pattern that governs the movement of these stone walls? A confident smile appeared on Ling Han's face. He had ventured into numerous ancient sites during the last few years of his previous life. During that time, he had come across countless formations. Although the level of the formation before him was much higher, his cultivation level and divine sense were also much more powerful than before. The more powerful one's divine sense, the more powerful one's deduction and inference abilities would become. These were of utmost importance for alchemy, puppet creation, formation setting, and formation cracking. Ling Han's eyes moved about slightly as he stared at the formation. As time went on, the speed at which his eyes moved also increased. This was because he was following and remembering all the changes in the formation. After he remembered them, he would start to analyze the patterns that governed their movement. If he entered the Black Tower and performed comprehension under the reincarnation tree, 1 day's worth of comprehension would be equivalent to an entire year's outside. Thus, he would naturally be able to crack this formation in an extremely short amount of time. However, the time limit meant that this formation could be cracked in under 2 hours. There were rewards at stake, and he was confident that he would be able to crack this formation without any external help. His mind was already whirring, and a smile quickly tugged at the corners of his mouth. There are 36 transformations, and there are also 7 areas designed to trick people. If one enters those places, they'll definitely be trapped. I'm ready now. Ling Han walked into the stone labyrinth. He headed left for a while, and then right. He appeared especially relaxed, and he passed through the stone formation in only around an hour. Another large hall appeared before him. Xiao Sisi, Duan, and the others who had set off before him had all arrived here already. Even Xia Wuque had already arrived. Prodigies were prodigies, after all, and they were outstanding even in the field of deduction. However, part of the reason was because the formation had been relatively simple. As such, it hadn't been able to separate the skills of the prodigies apart. If the difficulty of the formation had been increased dramatically, perhaps differences in completion time would reach several or even dozens of years. The hall before Ling Han also had a stone tablet. Ling Han nodded in greeting to Xiao Sisi and the others first, and then he walked up to the stone tablet and said, "I've passed, so where is my reward?" "Brat, remember to call me senior," the stone tablet said angrily. Ling Han took this opportunity to ask, "What should I refer to senior as?" Xiao Sisi and the others all perked their ears up. They were also keen to learn about this large tomb's origin. Being able to construct a tomb among the stars and planets was far too astonishing. Haha. Back in the day, I had galloped across the universe and been invincible for a generation. You people can refer to me as the Invincible Paragon Saint, the stone tablet said. So shameless. Everyone shook their heads in their minds. They acknowledged that this person had been supremely powerful when alive. However, it was a bit over the top for him to call himself invincible. The world was vast, and powerful beings were as many as the clouds. Who could be truly invincible? Moreover, even saints couldn't escape death. If one were invincible, could they overcome the great Tao of heaven and earth? Oh, so it's you're invincible, Ling Han said. However, there wasn't a shred of respect in his voice, and this made the invincible Paragon Saint feel extremely vexed. Bunch of brats. Back in the day, might forget about it. A real man doesn't boast about his past achievements. The invincible Paragon Saint humphed, and said, "Take it, it's your reward." Ling Han looked over, only to find another vial of pills on the ground. "What is it this time?" he asked. "Purple Pattern Mountain River Pill," the invincible Paragon Saint said. "Again?" Ling Han said with a grimace. His expression was one of great displeasure. To most people, alchemical pills were incredibly rare and precious. In fact, high-level alchemical pills would even trigger fights and potentially lead to deaths. Such occurrences weren't rare. However, Ling Han was the alchemy emperor. After receiving the corresponding pill recipes, what pills couldn't he refine? Thus, he despised alchemical pill rewards the most. In addition, this was actually the Purple Pattern Mountain River pill again. Wrong, wrong, wrong. The invincible Paragon Saint repeated the word wrong 3 times to emphasize his point. This isn't the same Purple Pattern Mountain River pill as last time. Rather, this Purple Pattern Mountain River pill can provide one with 1 star more power than the previous Purple Pattern Mountain River pill. Although you emphasized your point, and although you spoke in riddles, this still doesn't change the fact that it's simply a Purple Pattern Mountain River pill. It's merely of a slightly higher quality. Ling Han shook his head in disappointment. He was an alchemist, so he was naturally aware that lame alchemists would end up with alchemical pills of differing levels even when refining the same cauldron of pills. Some pills would reach the standard 10 stars, while other pills would only reach 8, 7, or even just 5 stars. Of course, such kinds of lame alchemists made up 99% of the alchemy world. In fact, this was nothing surprising. It was just that Ling Han's expertise in alchemy was already too high, so he couldn't help but look down on such kinds of ordinary alchemists. "I'll take them back if you don't want them." The invincible Paragon Saint was even more displeased than Ling Han. Ling Han hurriedly put the pills away. These were for free anyway, so why wouldn't he take them? "What's the next trial like?" he asked. The invincible Paragon Saint humphed, and said, "You want me to give you special treatment with that attitude of yours? In your dreams." Ling Han laughed loudly, and said, "Everyone treats you with respect, and only I'm different from the ordinary. Isn't this enough reason for you to open the back door for me?" The invincible Paragon Saint was speechless for a moment. Then, he sighed. "I suddenly realized that you're more of a sh*tty brat than I initially thought." Chapter 11-19, Deciphering a Sword Strike. Ling Han's face involuntarily darkened. Why did the stone tablet suddenly curse him? Could they still communicate in a civil manner? Xiao Cixi and the others all covered their mouths and laughed. They truly admired Ling Han's courage. Although this invincible Paragon Saint had died long ago, with only a wisp of his will remaining, there were clearly countless astounding formations spread throughout this large tomb. Moreover, this will could control and manipulate these formations that were powerful enough to contain heavenly body tier elites. Thus, none of them dared to show any disrespect before the stone tablet. They were all afraid of his might. This had nothing to do with whether one was prodigious or prideful. In the cultivation world, strength was all that mattered. If one didn't possess enough strength, what right did they have to be proud? However, Ling Han was able to speak freely before this invincible Paragon Saint. This caused the others to label him as reckless in their minds, though they also couldn't help but feel admiration for his courage. Most importantly, it seemed as if Ling Han was to the invincible Paragon Saint's liking. Otherwise, the invincible Paragon Saint would have directly killed him instead of calling him a sh*tty brat. "Since you begged me, I'll be kind and tell you. A soft glow radiated from the stone tablet, and the Invincible Paragon Saint said, "The third trial requires you to decipher a sword strike." Decipher a sword strike? How does that work? Ling Han asked. The Invincible Sword Saint became a little impatient, and he said, "You still don't understand? You have to decipher a sword strike, and if you succeed, you'll pass the trial. If not, then you can P*SS off. Is there a reward for passing this trial?" Ling Han continued to ask. The Invincible Paragon Saint was almost rendered speechless. Can't you act more like the prodigy that you are? Why are you always thinking about rewards? A person shouldn't be too focused on material benefits. Sigh, forget about it. It's useless even if I ask. Ling Han shrugged his shoulders, and continued, "It's definitely going to be purple pattern mountain river pills again. They'll only be of slightly higher quality at best and elevate one's power by 3 stars. The Invincible Paragon Saint had just been about to speak, yet his words were forcefully shoved back into his mouth. That was indeed the reward for passing the third trial. Fuck. Those pills can elevate your power by 3 stars. That's extremely impressive if you're battling against someone at the same cultivation level as yourself. Yet, you're still not satisfied? However, as a senior, how could he debate such matters with a junior? P*SS off. Hurry up and P*SS off. I feel angry just looking at your *TTY face, he said in irritation. Calm down, I still need to wait for someone. Ling Han sat cross-legged on the floor, and he also placed the Azura Demon Emperor back into the Black Tower. He was going to wait for Shui Yanyu to arrive. Although the labyrinth wasn't dangerous, Ling Han would remain worried for as long as he didn't see her arrive. *TTY brat, the Invincible Paragon Saint murmured. You definitely can't be that person. Otherwise, I'll feel extremely vexed. Xiao Sisi and the others didn't wait with Ling Han. Instead, they entered the third level of the tower to challenge the Deciphering Sword Strike trial. After waiting for another hour or so, Ling Han finally saw Shui Yanyu arrive. This seductive beauty's face was filled with disappointment. Although she had successfully passed the labyrinth, she had exceeded the 2-hour time limit. Although she wasn't a first-rate prodigy at the Scarlet Heaven Academy, she was at least talented enough to be called a prodigy. In this large tomb, however, she discovered that she was merely holding Ling Han back. See, hadn't Ling Han been waiting for her just then? Wife, what unnecessary thoughts are running through your mind? Ling Han embraced her lightly, and comforted, many people only experience success later in their lives. Moreover, as long your husband is powerful enough, I can find you all kinds of natural treasures. Perhaps you can eat them and instantly become a saint. Shui Yanyu rolled her eyes at him. Did he know how to comfort people? Wasn't this hurting her confidence even more? *TTY brat, your thoughts are quite fanciful, the Invincible Paragon Saint suddenly said. Do you think that natural treasures that can instantly elevate one to the level of saint are as common as cabbage? Do you think you'll be able to get your hands on them? Ling Han's interest was piqued, and he asked, are there really godly treasures that can instantly transform one into a saint? He had only said that to comfort Shui Yanyu. Had he genuinely guessed right? Heaven and earth are so vast. What kinds of treasures don't exist? The Invincible Paragon Saint sighed in emotion, and said, Heaven and earth have birthed things so poisonous that even saints will drop dead upon coming into contact with them. On the flip side, heaven and earth have also birthed things so wonderful that even mortals can shoot to the sky in a single step. Judging by what you've said, talent and whatnot are of no importance compared to pure luck, Ling Han concluded. You're not entirely wrong, the Invincible Paragon Saint said. However, such fortunate people only appear once every several trillion years. Moreover, even if one obtains a supreme medicine that allows them to instantly become a saint, the cultivation that they receive isn't a result of their own comprehension. They'll need billions upon trillions of years to understand and achieve mastery of these comprehensions. If they're less talented, perhaps they'll never be able to improve another inch for the rest of their lives. Ling Han smiled, and said, I'm confident that I can become that fortunate person. In fact, one supreme medicine mightn't be enough. Although the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden and Hellion Sun Shua were both relatively talented, there was only a sliver of hope that they could become saints. Moreover, he still had his parents as well as Lu Yutong and his other lovers. He couldn't just sit on his hands and watch them age and die, right? So be it if there was nothing that he could do. However, since there was a ray of hope, he had to fight to grab onto it no matter what. He had to obtain these supreme medicines to raise the strength of those around him. In fact, it was the Rain Emperor, Ding Ping, and the others who were incredibly talented cultivators. Moreover, they were resolute and determined in addition to being talented, and as long as they didn't die, it was extremely likely that they would become saints one day. The Invincible Paragon Saint almost spat blood. Such kinds of supreme medicines only appear once every several trillion years. Obtaining one will cost one several lifetimes of fortune, yet you actually want a few? I'll give you my admiration if you're genuinely able to obtain a supreme medicine. If you can obtain two, I'll change my surname to yours. Heh, no need to follow my surname. I already have a son. Ling Han chuckled as he rejected his offer. The Invincible Paragon Saint was rendered speechless. This person was truly shameless. P*SS off, P*SS off. Otherwise, I won't be able to resist the urge to kick you in the face, he said impatiently. Hold up for a moment. What's the next trial like? Can we two complete it together? Yes, it's only deciphering a sword strike anyway. You'll receive a reward as long as you can decipher it within a set time. The Invincible Sword Saint appeared especially irritated, and he continued, I know that you care about rewards the most. So, there's no need to ask any more. There was a look of disdain on Ling Han's face, and he said, it's going to be another purple pattern mountain river pill anyway. It'll probably elevate one's power by 3 stars at most. SSH*TTY brat. The Invincible Paragon Saint was so ticked off that his face was almost twisted out of shape. Ling Han chuckled, and said, I really do wish that Senior can reward me with something else. The Invincible Paragon Saint gritted his teeth if he still had teeth and spat, fuck off. How boring. I haven't even passed the 3rd trial yet I already know that the reward is merely another purple pattern mountain river pill. Sigh. Ling Han grumbled in his mind as he held hands with Shui Yenyu and climbed the stairs to the 3rd level. There were numerous people standing here. There were those at the mountain river tier, those at the sun moon tier, and even those at the heavenly body tier. Ling Han was slightly astonished by this sight. Shouldn't the first trial have eliminated most of the people? How were there still so many people here? Up ahead, a person that was formed from light was currently performing the same sword strike over and over again. However, this sword strike appeared to adhere to some true meaning of the Great Tao. Each strike was tremendously mighty and seemed able to suppress heaven and earth. We have to decipher this sword strike. Ling Han watched the sword strike carefully. This strike wasn't especially complex, and its might came from its resonance with the Great Tao. It drew on the regulations of heaven and earth, appearing extremely mysterious every time it was performed. We're timed starting from when we enter, right? It's just that we're all timed differently depending on when we entered. This realization made Ling Han feel even more strange. Is this really a tomb? Chapter 1120, Learning from the Sword Strike. Ling Han felt that if he were to die one day, he definitely wouldn't set up so many trials and whatnot in his tomb. He felt that it would make much more sense if the trials here were being used to select disciples for the Majestic Heaven sect. However, they weren't, and they were instead trials left by a dead person. This Invincible Paragon Saint isn't thinking of recruiting a disciple, is he? This was extremely likely. Otherwise, what was the point of setting up so many trials? However, why couldn't he say it straight up? There was almost no doubt that he was a Genesis tier saint. Even if he wasn't, he was still at least an Eternal River tier elite. One had to realize that the Majestic Heavens sect only had a single Eternal River tier elite as well. However, even if it were only the Majestic Heavens sect that was recruiting disciples and not he himself, all the young king tier prodigies in the neighboring galaxies were still especially eager. Meanwhile, the situation here suggested that a Genesis tier saint was going to find a disciple after his death. People would definitely fight tooth and nail for this opportunity. Hang on. Ling Han shook his head in his mind. If the Invincible Paragon saint made his intentions clear, it was likely that the heavenly body tier elites here would go around killing everyone else. See, if almost everyone else was dead, wouldn't their chances of success increase significantly? If a Genesis tier saint wanted to take a disciple, they naturally wouldn't favor those at the heavenly body tier over others. Instead, they would care more about one's potential. In other words, they would try to find someone who was most suited to following their path. Talent couldn't represent everything. Different people would be suited to different paths. Anyhow, the sword strike was especially simple, and everyone replicated its movements as they attempted to decipher a method to overcome it. The sword strike didn't possess any origin power when unleashed by the light person, and thus one naturally couldn't defeat this strike through brute strength. Instead, they had to defeat this strike using another strike. When one felt that they could defeat the strike, they could head over to exchange strikes with the light person. Whether or not they succeeded was naturally determined in a matter of seconds. In addition, a layer of primal chaos would envelop both the light person and the person that was attempting to decipher and overcome the sword strike. As a result, the others wouldn't be able to see their exchange. If the person passed, they would be able to leave. If not, they would return to their original spot. Because of this, the others couldn't derive any help or copy patterns based on the process of the light person's exchanges. Ling Han swept his gaze over the surroundings. There were truly a lot of heavenly body tier elites. However, he didn't see Empress Luan Xing. Perhaps she hadn't come yet, or perhaps she had already deciphered this sword strike long ago and ascended to the 4th level. It was a shame that there were so many watchful eyes. Otherwise, he could have entered the Black Tower with Shui Yenyu and completed comprehension under the reincarnation tree. One day was equivalent to 1 year, and he was confident that no one could possibly be faster than them. Ling Han sighed in his mind. Even if he broke the time record and passed this trial with flying colors, his reward would still be a single purple pattern mountain river pill. It was useful, but not that useful. Forget about it. I'll just decipher it here. Ling Han focused his attention back on the sword strike. This strike drew on some regulations of heaven and earth, making it appear remarkably profound. He couldn't learn this sword strike. This wasn't because his comprehension ability was weak, but rather because this sword strike drew on regulations that far exceeded the mountain river tier. Although he couldn't learn it, this didn't mean that he couldn't decipher it. Otherwise, the Invincible Paragon Saint would have been giving them an impossible task. However, this required time. Ling Han mulled over the sword strike in his mind, and he couldn't help but click his tongue in wonder. This strike was truly incredible. It suppressed its opponent using the power of the Great Tao. This was amazingly mysterious. He couldn't learn this strike, but he could learn from its principles. Sword of the Great Tao? Enlightenment arose in his mind. If he combined the Sword of the Great Tao with his fast technique, how powerful would the might of the resulting sword technique be? The fast technique destroyed the regulations, while the Sword of the Great Tao adhered to the regulations. It would be a pioneering feat if these two techniques could be combined. This would be his own path. Ling Han nodded in his mind. He had always wanted to create a technique that belonged to himself. However, achieving this was an extremely difficult task. Yet, right now, he finally saw a path before him. This allowed his comprehension to become clearer and more distinct. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Ling Han ruminated over the sword strike in his mind. Right now, he wasn't thinking about how to decipher it anymore. Rather, he was exploring the workings of this strike. The more he understood it, the more enlightenment arose in his mind. This caused him to be beside himself with delight. He lost all track of time. Some people successfully defeated the sword strike and left, while many others arrived and joined in on the deciphering. Many more people remained exactly where they were. After heaven knew how long, Ling Han finally came to his senses after being tapped on the arm by Shui Yenyu. This seductive beauty was somewhat confident that she had deciphered the sword strike, and she was ready to head over to test herself against the light person. Meanwhile, Shui Yenyu found it strange that Ling Han still hadn't gone over to challenge the light person yet. This was extremely abnormal, and she was puzzled by it. Only now did Ling Han realize that Xiao Sisi, Duan, and the others had already left long ago. He was lagging far behind them. "You go first," he said with a smile. "I've reaped bigger rewards." Shui Yenyu's eyes lit up, and she said, "You're learning the sword technique?" His wife was understanding him better and better. Ling Han laughed loudly, and said, "Yes, but also no. I'm figuring out the sword strike, but I'm not actually learning it. I'm simply learning from its principles." Shui Yenyu nodded in understanding. Just as she had thought, Ling Han's comprehension ability was definitely no weaker than the other young king tier prodigies. "Then I'll head over first," she said. "Sure," Ling Han said with a nod. Shui Yenyu went over to challenge the light person. Unfortunately, she wasn't able to succeed. She wasn't dispirited. She said, "I'm confident that I can decipher this strike in 3 more days." Ling Han nodded and continued to mull over the sword intent contained within the strike. He definitely couldn't receive the reward for this trial, yet he didn't care at all. This opportunity to explore the great Tao of heaven and earth was far too precious and rare, and its value was countless times greater than that of the trial reward. He lost track of time once again, and the people around him came and went. At some point in time, he finally stood up. There was already nothing more that he could learn. After all, this was only a single strike. He could learn the rhythm of Tao, but he couldn't directly learn the regulations of Tao. In any case, he couldn't grasp such kinds of regulations anyway. They far exceeded his current cultivation level. A confident smile spread across Ling Han's face. He had already planted a seed in his mind, and there would eventually come a day when this seed sprouted and grew into a towering tree. When that time came, he would have forged a cultivation path that belonged to himself. He went over to challenge the light person. The light person wasn't a genuine being. As such, it was completely emotionless. It immediately unleashed the sword strike at Ling Han. Ling Han drew his divine demon sword and replied with a strike of his own. The tip of the light person's sword came to a stop before Ling Han's neck, and Ling Han's divine demon sword also came to a stop before the light person's neck. After a brief pause, Ling Han suddenly felt his surroundings spin. He appeared in a completely new place. He had passed the trial. Ling Han clearly hadn't thought about how to defeat the sword strike, yet strangely, the method to decipher and defeat it naturally came to his mind after he grasped the rhythm of Tao that was contained within it. "Ha ha ha ha. Brat, you can't ask me for a reward this time." There was yet another stone tablet here, and it was from this stone tablet that the Invincible Paragon Saint's voice traveled out. Right now, his voice was full of delight. Ling Han had dissed him many times over the rewards for passing the trials. However, he had finally lost the right to a reward this time, and this made the Invincible Paragon Saint feel an evil sense of pleasure. Ling Han smiled calmly, and said, "Yeah, I truly yearn for those alchemical pills, that's right. Don't tell me that the rewards for passing the 4th and 5th trials are also those pills?" "Congratulations, you're absolutely correct." The Invincible Paragon Saint smiled, and said, "The best purple pattern mountain river pills can reach a quality of 10 stars. In other words, they can elevate one's power by a maximum of 10 stars. Ling Han found this to be strange, and he asked, "If my power can already surpass 5 stars, won't I obtain a power of 15 stars after ingesting a 10-star quality purple pattern mountain river pill?" Chapter 11:21, Hit Me. Impossible. The Invincible Paragon Saint denied so hard one could picture him shaking his head, and said, 10 stars is an absolute threshold. There's no way to surpass it. If you already possess a power of 10 stars, then ingesting the purple pattern mountain river pills will be completely useless. Oh, Ling Han said with a nod. He was genuinely disinterested in this kind of alchemical pill. This was because he held a firm belief that he could definitely reach the true pinnacle of the mountain river tier. I can reach a state of perfection myself, so what's the point of relying on external items? It's best to avoid relying on external items whenever possible. The true power of cultivators should belong to their own bodies. Ling Han chuckled, and said, so, you're going to keep rewarding us with purple pattern mountain river pills? Can't you swap these out for something else? No, unless you can pass the 9th level of the tower, the Invincible Paragon Saint said. Ling Han's eyes lit up, and he asked, what reward will I receive? The Invincible Paragon Saint scoffed, and said, and you're saying that you're not greedy. You've revealed your true nature now, huh? Can't I ask out of curiosity? Ling Han said with a smile. Pfft. Do you believe that excuse yourself? There was a look of disdain on the Invincible Paragon Saint's face. Ling Han laughed loudly, and said, you're a senior, so is it really good for you to make fun of me like that? Everyone has a responsibility to lambaste shameless people, the Invincible Paragon Saint said. Ling Han rolled his eyes. This Invincible Paragon Saint needed to change his name to Invincible D*Keckhead Saint. He was actually exchanging slurs with a junior like him. What's the 4th trial like? He asked. Hee, the 4th to 9th trials are all the same. They're extremely easy, and simply test how powerful your attacks are, as well as how sturdy your defenses are. As for the final reward, that's naturally a secret that will be revealed at the very end. Anyhow, what's the point of telling you now? Can you become the fortunate fellow who lasts until the end? The Invincible Paragon Saint said. How boring, Ling Han said with a shake his head. He had genuinely wished that there would be a few more sword strikes for him to decipher and learn from. That would have allowed him to walk further along his own cultivation path. Pass through all 9 trials first, then tell me whether you're bored or not. The Invincible Paragon Saint humphed, and said, piss off, piss off. Is there a halo of pesky irritation above your head? Why do I feel annoyed and angry just looking at you? It's you that's unreliable, okay? Ling Han grumbled in his mind. He didn't speak any more nonsense, and climbed the stairs to the 4th level. This level was spacious and empty, with only 2 stone statues standing in the middle of the room. There was also an hourglass, and it had just started to measure the time. One of the stone statues had "Hit Me" written across its chest, while the other stone statue had "I'll hit you" written across its chest. That D*Keckhead Saint is indeed unreliable. Ling Han walked up to the stone statue that had "Hit Me" written across its chest first. He then clenched his fist and swung it toward it. Pung! The stone statue was instantly sent flying. He wanted to follow up with another strike to obliterate the stone statue once and for all, yet the words on the stone statue's chest suddenly changed to pass. That's all? Ling Han was astonished. He wasn't interested in being hit by the other stone statue, so he confidently strode out of the room. You finished that quickly? There was a hint of annoyance in the Invincible Paragon Saint's voice, and he said, Here, take it and P*SS off. Righto, I've become this disliked. Ling Han didn't stop, and continued on to the 5th level. As with the 4th level, there were also 2 stone statues in this room, one which had "Hit Me" written across its chest, and one which had "I'll hit you" written across its chest. Ling Han still didn't want to be hit. Thus, he naturally chose to hit the first stone statue. He threw a fist, and the stone statue fell over. However, he realized that this stone statue was clearly stronger than the one on the 4th level. This was because it had merely fallen down, and not been sent flying. Anyhow, he had still passed this 5th trial. It was evident that these stone statues would become stronger the higher up the tower he climbed. Although he hadn't challenged the "I'll hit you" stone statue yet, he believed that the offensive ability of these stone statues would also rise with each increasing level. As expected. This tomb is selecting a disciple, isn't it? Ling Han didn't mind receiving the inheritance of a Genesis tier saint. Such beings were the strongest in the immortal realm, and even Venerable Trinity would go crazy with excitement if he arrived in this place. However, the Invincible Paragon saint didn't like him much anymore, so would he deal him a blow from behind after he emerged victorious from the crowd? It was very likely that this unreliable D*Kekhead saint could do such things. Forget about it. I have to pass this tower no matter what, so I may as well deal with whatever comes my way. Ling Han collected his prize and climbed the stairs to the 6th level. Pung! He chose the "hit me" stone statue once again, yet the stone statue remained unmoving even after he struck it. Ling Han was astonished. His power could surpass almost 6 stars now, and the difficulty of the trials in this place was definitely adjusted according to one's cultivation level. There was no way the trials would have a Mountain River tier cultivator attack a Heavenly Body tier stone statue. Similarly, it wouldn't have a Heavenly Body tier elite attack a Mountain River tier stone statue. Otherwise, these trials would be completely pointless. Yet, even a power that surpassed 6 stars wasn't enough. Ling Han activated his secret techniques, as well as his divine patterns of flame. He then launched another strike at the "hit me" stone statue. However, his flames could only scorch the stone statue black and increase the amount of damage, only it couldn't increase the power of his physical strike. He tried to swallow a purple pattern Mountain River pill, yet he discovered that his spatial spirit tool had been sealed. He had stored the purple pattern Mountain River pills into his spatial spirit tool in order to prevent the Invincible Paragon saint from discovering the secret of his black tower. That being the case, he could only rely on his own power to pass this trial. Ling Han unleashed his fast technique, yet the might of the fast technique was largely realized in its ability to be fast. It couldn't generate a power that exceeded his limit. It was ineffective. Ling Han took a few steps back, and then unleashed his annihilating dragon star arrow. Shio, shio, shio. He used his origin power as arrows and fired several shots toward the stone statue. However, this was still to no avail, and the stone statue still stood in the exact same spot. He was truly astonished this time. His power could surpass 6 stars, and he had even activated a secret technique on top of that. Yet, he was still unable to pass this trial. 1/3 of the sand had already trickled to the bottom half of the hourglass. Will I have failed when all of the sand trickles down? He hadn't seen any others at the staircase leading to the 6th level, and this signified that one would be directly sent back to the 1st level if they failed to pass this trial. Then I'll use the ultimate arrow. This arrow would unleash all of the power in his body in an instant. Not only was it incredibly quick, but it was also devastatingly powerful. If even this failed, then Ling Han's only option would be to get hit. Ling Han took a deep breath, and then started to activate the ultimate arrow. His origin power gathered rapidly under the effects of this secret technique. He would be able to unleash his full power at any moment. Shio! The origin power arrow transformed into a streak of light as it shot out. It struck the "hit me" stone statue, and immediately sent it flying. He had passed. A smile appeared on Ling Han's face. However, he instantly plopped down onto the ground. He was out of energy. Only after a while did he recover some of his stamina. He stood up and walked out, and he saw another stone tablet appear in his blurry and shaky vision. Brat, your abilities are a little beyond my expectations. Your power hasn't reached 6 stars yet you were still able to pass the 6th trial. The Invincible Paragon Saint didn't hide the surprise and praise in his voice. It was just so, Ling Han spoke modestly, yet his expression was one of smugness. He was doing this on purpose. There was no need to show too much respect to unreliable seniors like this Invincible Paragon Saint. Rather, acting as he did now was more to this senior's liking. Although the Invincible Paragon Saint always roared at Ling Han to P*SS off, the only person that he actively spoke to was also Ling Han as well. This spoke volumes about what he liked. Hee, I've got my eyes on you now. I'm sure that you won't be able to pass the 7th trial. Sure enough, this D*Keckhead Saint couldn't help but exchange slurs with Ling Han now. Chapter 11:21, Hit Me. Impossible. The Invincible Paragon Saint denied so hard one could picture him shaking his head, and said, 10 stars is an absolute threshold. There's no way to surpass it. If you already possess a power of 10 stars, then ingesting the purple pattern mountain river pills will be completely useless. Oh, Ling Han said with a nod. He was genuinely disinterested in this kind of alchemical pill. This was because he held a firm belief that he could definitely reach the true pinnacle of the mountain river tier. I can reach a state of perfection myself, so what's the point of relying on external items? It's best to avoid relying on external items whenever possible. The true power of cultivators should belong to their own bodies. Ling Han chuckled, and said, so, you're going to keep rewarding us with purple pattern mountain river pills? Can't you swap these out for something else? No, unless you can pass the 9th level of the tower, the Invincible Paragon Saint said. Ling Han's eyes lit up, and he asked, what reward will I receive? The Invincible Paragon Saint scoffed, and said, and you're saying that you're not greedy. You've revealed your true nature now, huh? Can't I ask out of curiosity? Ling Han said with a smile. Pfft. Do you believe that excuse yourself? There was a look of disdain on the Invincible Paragon Saint's face. Ling Han laughed loudly, and said, you're a senior, so is it really good for you to make fun of me like that? Everyone has a responsibility to lambast shameless people, the Invincible Paragon Saint said. Ling Han rolled his eyes. This Invincible Paragon Saint needed to change his name to Invincible D*Keckhead Saint. He was actually exchanging slurs with a junior like him. What's the 4th trial like? He asked. The 4th to 9th trials are all the same. They're extremely easy, and simply test how powerful your attacks are, as well as how sturdy your defenses are. As for the final reward, that's naturally a secret that will be revealed at the very end. Anyhow, what's the point of telling you now? Can you become the fortunate fellow who lasts until the end? The Invincible Paragon Saint said. How boring, Ling Han said with a shake his head. He had genuinely wished that there would be a few more sword strikes for him to decipher and learn from. That would have allowed him to walk further along his own cultivation path. Pass through all 9 trials first, then tell me whether you're bored or not. The Invincible Paragon Saint humphed, and said, piss off, piss off. Is there a halo of pesky irritation above your head? Why do I feel annoyed and angry just looking at you? It's you that's unreliable, okay? Ling Han grumbled in his mind. He didn't speak any more nonsense, and climbed the stairs to the 4th level. This level was spacious and empty, with only 2 stone statues standing in the middle of the room. There was also an hourglass, and it had just started to measure the time. One of the stone statues had "Hit me" written across its chest, while the other stone statue had "I'll hit you" written across its chest. That D*Keckhead Saint is indeed unreliable. Ling Han walked up to the stone statue that had "Hit me" written across its chest first. He then clenched his fist and swung it toward it. Pung! The stone statue was instantly sent flying. He wanted to follow up with another strike to obliterate the stone statue once and for all, yet the words on the stone statue's chest suddenly changed to pass. That's all? Ling Han was astonished. He wasn't interested in being hit by the other stone statue, so he confidently strode out of the room. You finished that quickly? There was a hint of annoyance in the Invincible Paragon Saint's voice, and he said, Here, take it and P*SS off. Righto, I've become this disliked. Ling Han didn't stop, and continued on to the 5th level. As with the 4th level, there were also 2 stone statues in this room, one which had, "Hit me," written across its chest, and one which had, "I'll hit you," written across its chest. Ling Han still didn't want to be hit. Thus, he naturally chose to hit the first stone statue. He threw a fist, and the stone statue fell over. In terms of offensive ability, his power hadn't even reached 6 stars yet. As such, even the explosive power of his ultimate arrow was somewhat limited. In other words, it was impossible for him to raise his power anymore. When it came to defensive ability, however, how many stars could he surpass? Hee, come at me. The "I'll hit you" stone statue instantly came to life when he walked before it. Then, it struck its fist toward him. Pang! Ling Han was instantly sent flying. However, before he had even landed, the stone statue had already caught up again and launched another strike. So fast. So powerful. Ling Han exclaimed in his mind. There was no special divine pattern on the stone statue's body. It was just that its power was extraordinarily great. Ling Han couldn't block its fists. However, what did that matter? His defenses had already reached the toughness of level 4 godly metal. If one wanted to wound him with raw power, they would need to possess power that was at least at the Sun-Moon tier. In any case, all Ling Han could do was try his best to ward off the stone statue's relentless and powerful attacks. There was absolutely no opportunity for him to counterattack. He tried his best to protect his face. Since he couldn't escape the fate of being beaten, of course it was necessary for him to guard his handsome face. When choosing the "hit me" statues, one strike was all it took to pass the trial and thus level. However, the "I'll hit you" statues were completely different. Pang, pang, pang. A barrage of relentless attacks continued to rain down on Ling Han, and it appeared as if the stone statue would only stop when it had beaten him to death. Only when the hourglass stopped flowing did the stone statue retreat to the side. The "I'll hit you" on its chest changed into "pass." Ling Han groaned, and thought to himself, "Can't you beat me a little less?" He walked out, and the stone tablet reappeared among the changed surroundings. However, another person had also arrived in this place. It was Empress Luan Xing. This was astounding. Empress Luan Xing had also managed to make it here. However, had she passed by striking the stone statue, or had she passed by being beaten by the stone statue? Ling Han felt that the former was more possible. After all, the indestructible Heaven Scroll was far too unique. However, if it were the former, then this Empress' power was unexpectedly strong. If this were the case, shouldn't she have been powerful enough to defeat the Jade Drop and Eternity Sky majestic empires? Why didn't she unite the joint peace planet? Of course, it was also possible that those 2 majestic empires had been imperial empires before. If that were the case, they would have extremely powerful trump cards, for example, supreme killing formations that couldn't be moved. As such, they would have tremendously powerful defenses even if their offensive abilities were lacking. There was definitely a reason behind the 3 majestic empires being able to coexist peacefully for millions of years. Empress Luan Xing also saw Ling Han. A look of astonishment appeared on her face that was hidden by the aura of primal chaos that shrouded her. She hadn't expected anyone else to also make it through the first 8 levels of the tower. She even more so didn't expect that person to be Ling Han. Killing intent flashed past her beautiful eyes. She, who had never been touched by a man before, had actually sucked this person's blood. And she had sucked it from his neck, no less. Moreover, her breasts had also been groped by this bastard. These memories caused her killing intent to seethe and boil. Even that wisp of will in her mind couldn't prevent her from steeling her resolve to kill this person. She immediately struck a palm toward Ling Han. This was an attack from a heavenly body tier elite, and even heaven and earth lost their luster. "Stop, stop, stop," the stone tablet shouted. The overwhelming attack instantly vanished into thin air. "Although I also detest that brat, anyone who enters this tower is a seed. Before I give up on them, none of them can die." Ling Han's heart thumped against his chest. There was the invincible Paragon Saint to protect him now, but what would he do after they left this tower? He cultivated in the Scarlet Heaven Academy, and the Great Ling Empire was also a vassal state of the Chaotic Star's majestic empire. He could run, but he couldn't hide. Sigh, why did you suddenly run over to suck blood? It's not like you're a bat or anything. Empress Luanxing didn't attack anymore, instead simply glaring at Ling Han. She knew that it would be impossible to kill Ling Han here. Thus, being the decisive person that she was, she naturally wouldn't waste any more time or strength on him. However, she was infuriated by the fact that she could only glare at the pervert who had molested her, even though he was standing right before her eyes. She was an empress, a ruler of a majestic empire, yet she actually couldn't deal with a lowly subordinate? It's the last trial already, so hurry up and begin. I can barely wait any longer, the invincible Paragon Saint said. Hurry, hurry, hurry. If you can pass, I'll give you a massive surprise. Empress Luanxing didn't hesitate, and immediately climbed the stairs to the 9th level. It was clear that her goal was to leave this tower as soon as possible and then kill Ling Han. Ling Han shook his head. By the looks of it, he would have no choice but to use the Black Tower. Chapter 1123, Final Trial. The 9th level was the last level, and as with the previous several levels, there were 2 stone statues standing in the middle of the room. They were the 2 brothers, Hit Me, and I'll Hit You. Sure enough, Empress Luanxing chose the Hit Me stone statue. Meanwhile, Ling Han chose the I'll Hit You stone statue. This caused a sense of grief to well up in his heart. However, whom could he blame for not having 5 mountains and rivers yet? Whom could he blame for not reaching the pinnacle of the mountain river tier yet? Anyhow, the fact that Empress Luanxing was actually able to pass the 8th trial through her offensive power was extremely astounding. Ling Han involuntarily looked over. He wanted to witness the might of this empress with his own 2 eyes. Wang. 4 heavenly bodies materialized behind Empress Luanxing's back, each of them exuding a profound and ancient aura. Excellent, excellent. You've reached a state of perfection for both the Sun-Moon tier and Mountain-River tier. Although you've yet to form your 5th heavenly body, your strength has already reached 9 stars. The invincible Paragon Saint couldn't help but praise Empress Luanxing. Ling Han was stunned. The Empress is actually this freakishly talented? People often said that 5-star geniuses only existed in the legends. However, the power of this Empress had already surpassed 9 stars. As a result, her battle prowess also surpassed at least 9 stars. In fact, it was even possible that it surpassed more than 9 stars. If one wanted to battle against someone who was 1 major tier above them, however, they would need a power of 10 stars, not a battle prowess of 10 stars. Thus, she was still no match for elites at the Eternal River tier, at least not now. There was still hope, though, as she could form another heavenly body and reach a state of perfection in the heavenly body tier. It's very strange, however, the invincible Paragon Saint continued. Although I can sense the fact that you should have 5 mountains and rivers, as well as 5 suns and moons, your power isn't as powerful as I imagined. I was the one who constructed this tower and the trials within it, and it should be easy to pass as long as one has a power that can surpass 8 stars. Your power can clearly surpass 9 stars, yet you struggle to even pass the 8th trial. I wonder why that is? The invincible Paragon Saint appeared to be extremely curious. The fact that even a saint like him was curious showed just how astonishing a secret Empress Luanxing hid within her body. However, this was all understandable. Empress Luanxing had suddenly risen to power 1 million years ago, establishing the Chaotic Star's majestic empire and conquering 1/3 of the land on the Joint Peace Planet. However, before she became one of the 3 rulers of the Joint Peace Planet, it was as if she had suddenly appeared from out of nowhere. No one knew where she had come from. There was definitely a huge secret hiding behind her meteoric rise. Empress Luanxing didn't answer the invincible Paragon Saint's curiosity. She didn't restrain her domineering aura either, even though she stood in the presence of a being who had once been a saint. She simply channeled the power of her heavenly bodies and pressed her hand toward the stone statue. A tangle of intertwining divine patterns appeared before her, yet at a rough glance, there were only 4,000 or so. Possessing 4,000 or so divine patterns could only be regarded as relatively powerful. However, it was still a long way off the pinnacle of the heavenly body tier, which was 9,999 divine patterns. Indeed, Empress Luanxing was still a long way off from reaching a power of 9 stars. Did the Invincible Paragon Saint observe wrong? Perhaps Empress Luanxing hasn't reached a power of 9 stars yet? However, how is that possible? Although he's a D*Kekhead saint, his observation skills shouldn't be this weak. Otherwise, he might as well find a block of tofu and smack himself to death. It was clear that Empress Luanxing was preparing a powerful attack. The aura of primal chaos around her swarmed, and the cloak that draped behind her billowed even though there was no wind. Her hair also fluttered, and she appeared both mighty and seductively beautiful. Casting one's gaze over the world, perhaps she was the only person who could combine these two starkly different dispositions so perfectly. Apocalyptic scenes flashed across the Empress' eyes. However, it was a pity that her face was hidden by the aura of primal chaos, preventing Ling Han from seeing this sight. However, the Invincible Paragon Saint could clearly see through the aura of primal chaos. He faltered for a moment before saying, "Huh? Why do I suddenly feel like I've seen that before? However, I can't seem to recall where I saw it." Ling Han was astonished. Elites wouldn't suffer from bad memory, as their divine sense was incredibly powerful. Thus, their memory was naturally amazing. However, the Invincible Paragon Saint actually said that he couldn't recall something? How long ago must that event have occurred? Was it a memory from when he was a child? Otherwise, once one started to cultivate, their memories definitely wouldn't go hazy. Boom! Empress Luanxing struck out with her jade-like palm, and it was as if the heavens were about to collapse. Even though they were in this closed-off space, it still seemed as if a black hole that desired to swallow everything had appeared above their heads. Her strike is far too powerful. Is this power that surpasses 8 stars? Pung! The "hit me" stone statue fell, but wasn't sent flying. Haha! What overwhelming power! Excellent, excellent, the Invincible Paragon Saint praised. He then turned to Ling Han, and said, "Brat, it's your turn now." Ling Han felt extremely vexed. One person had struck a stone statue, while one person would be struck by a stone statue. Their experiences would be completely different. He sighed, and then walked before the "I'll hit you" statue. "Come at me. I've accepted the fact that I still haven't reached a state of perfection for my cultivation level yet." The stone statue immediately started to attack Ling Han. Pang, pang, pang. The offensive power of the stone statue was even stronger this time, and all Ling Han could do was protect his handsome face while being relentlessly and mercilessly beaten. A ball of fire welled up in his heart this time. After all, this was different from when he was on the 8th level. Right now, the Empress was also watching him from the sidelines. However, Empress Luanxing didn't look down on him. Could any ordinary person take a beating like this? However, this didn't quell her killing intent. The hourglass quickly trickled to a stop. The "I'll hit you" statue finally ceased beating Ling Han, and it retreated to the side and became unmoving as if it were just another ordinary stone statue. "Where are our rewards? Hurry up and let us leave this place," Empress Luanxing urged. She naturally wasn't interested in the reward. Rather, she was itching to leave this place so she could kill Ling Han. Ling Han hurriedly smiled, and said, "There's no hurry at all. Why don't we sit down for a cup of tea?" Ha 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 ha. The Invincible Paragon Saint roared with laughter, and said, very well indeed. One possesses a most powerful offensive ability, and one possesses a most powerful defensive ability. You two are the ideal match. Ideal match? Ling Han murmured. Then, he raised his voice in protest and said, "Oi, oi, oi, don't say things that can cause misunderstandings." Hee hee, hee 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 hee. The Invincible Paragon Saint laughed heartily. "Oi, what the hell do you mean?" Ling Han asked. The Invincible Paragon Saint kept laughing for a while before saying, "Next up is my reward for you too." He paused for a moment, seemingly eager to hear Ling Han and Empress Luan Xing's curious questions. To his disappointment, however, neither of them responded to him. Fuck. The Invincible Paragon Saint had been snubbed, so he could only continue, "I'm going to accept the child of you two as my disciple and raise them to become the most powerful person in the world." Pooh. Ling Han instantly spluttered loudly. "Are you fucking retarded?" However, the Invincible Paragon Saint appeared to be extremely excited, and he said, "When the most powerful offensive ability and most powerful defensive ability combine, the child that they create will definitely possess both of these great abilities. As such, this child will be the most suitable candidate for becoming my disciple." Ling Han shook his head, and said, "Oi, oi, oi, stop talking to yourself. There's no way that's going to happen." Meanwhile, a devastating killing intent surged from Empress Luan Xing's body. The Invincible Paragon Saint actually wanted her to have children with Ling Han? Was he seeking death? Haha. If I want you two to have children, you two will have no choice but to have children. The Invincible Paragon Saint chortled in glee, and continued, "Otherwise, you two can just stay here and here forever. Whenever my disciple is born is when I'll let you two out. Fuck." Chapter 1124, Give Birth to My Disciple. How vulgar and shameless. Isn't he forcing people to prostitute themselves? How can he force us to make a child? Are you still a senior? Ling Han questioned. How can you ask for something so vulgar and shameless? Pay. There are 3 kinds of unfilial deeds, not having descendants being the most severe of them. I'm merely doing what's best for you two, the Invincible Paragon Saint said. He was indeed a D***keckhead saint. How could he still remain so righteous when uttering such words? Shameless people clearly wouldn't back down at a mere few words. Ling Han's mind whirred, and he said, "Why do you insist on taking a newborn as your disciple? Just look at us two. One of us possesses the most powerful offensive ability, while one of us possesses the most powerful defensive ability. Why don't you teach your divine techniques to us?" The Invincible Paragon Saint's voice suddenly became cold, and he said, "Humph. Can you two be trusted? What? Has this senior been betrayed before? And he doesn't trust anyone anymore? I'll tell you two something, and hopefully this causes you two to give up. You'll be the parents of my disciple, after all, so you have the right to know about these matters." The Invincible Paragon Saint paused for a moment before continuing, "I was already a supreme elite countless years ago. However, I often cultivated in seclusion in order to charge toward an even higher cultivation level. I had 3 disciples at the time, yet, in order to break through to become saints, they actually plotted against me while I was cultivating in seclusion. Their actions caused me to suffer unhealable Dao wounds. As expected. This senior had been betrayed before, and it was because of this that he didn't trust people anymore. However, this was understandable. Disciples weren't like students, and it could be said that disciples were no different from one's own children. Being betrayed by people so close to him naturally gave him deep wounds. As a result, it was extremely difficult for him to trust others. Ling Han interjected, "Why did they plot against you? Wouldn't it have been better to have the guidance of a saint? Humph, do you think the Genesis tier is that easy to reach?" The Invincible Paragon Saint chuckled coldly, and said, "Even though my 3 disciples were prodigies among prodigies, their chances of reaching the Genesis tier were still less than 1 in 100. Taking that final step isn't something any ordinary prodigy can achieve. One also needs to come across enough rare opportunities and have enough godly medicines to support their cultivation. Otherwise, one will only end up destroying themselves if they try to break through blindly. They wanted to steal the fruits of my cultivation. Although this couldn't let them reach the Genesis tier immediately, it raised their chances of success by at least 30%. This was a choice between a chance of less than 1% and a chance of more than 30%. The appeal of becoming a saint was tremendous, and there were naturally those who would become reckless and take massive risks. In fact, there were even those who would kill their own master. "My condolences," Ling Han said in comfort. A puzzled expression then appeared on his face, and he asked, "Since you've already been betrayed by your disciples once, why are you still looking to take another disciple?" "Humph, it's because of this that I need to teach my disciple from when they're a blank piece of paper," the Invincible Paragon Saint said. "Fine, this senior has become obsessed with finding a newborn disciple. I can't be bothered talking to you anymore. Let us out of here." Ling Han shouted. "No problem. I'll let you two leave once you give birth to my disciple," the Invincible Paragon Saint said. "Just think about it. One day, the child of you two will become a supreme elite who can sweep through the galaxies and universe. How glorious is that?" Ling Han laughed loudly, and said, "There's no need to got to so much trouble. Someday, I myself will be able to sweep through the entire world. I don't need to rely on my children." *TTY brat, you're really brimming with confidence, aren't you? The Invincible Paragon Saint grumbled. "You're actually claiming that you can sweep through the entire world." Ling Han smiled, and said, "Aren't you the one calling yourself the Invincible Paragon Saint?" The Invincible Paragon Saint was rendered speechless. Although his current title was a bit over the top, at least he had been a saint before. But what about Ling Han? "My true identity is the Notionless Saint," he said. He revealed his true identity to prevent Ling Han from using his nickname to attack him. Ling Han pondered for a moment before saying, "Senior, it's already been so long, so perhaps your 3 disciples have already passed away." "Impossible," the Notionless Saint immediately said. "Although I was able to escape with my crippled body, my saintly origin was snatched by my 3 traitorous disciples. With their talents, it's extremely likely that they've all become saints. I've been cultivating my divine sense all these years, and I've even ground away my saintly might such that my disciple will be able to inherit it. This is also why I haven't returned to the outside world for so long. Based on my estimations, only a few 100 million years have passed, so those 3 traitorous disciples of mine are definitely still alive. Moreover, their cultivation has most likely reached a profound level as well." Ling Han felt that this saint had lived through a lot of grief. He had been screwed over by his disciples in life, yet after he died, he still chose to grind away his own divine sense in order to benefit his future disciple. Was there really a need for him to do this? "Senior, can't you live a second life?" he asked. "How can I live a second life without obtaining a reincarnation flower?" the Notionless Saint said. "However, only one reincarnation flower will exist in the entire immortal realm at any one time. Moreover, each flower needs tens of billions of years to bloom. As invincible as Saint Kings are, even they can only sigh in disappointment before a half-bloomed reincarnation flower if they're born during the wrong time. Anyhow, enough with the nonsense. Hurry up and make a disciple for me. Rest assured, I won't peek." "Oi! Oi!" Ling Han shouted. However, the stone tablet didn't make another sound. Empress Luanxing had been silently listening from the side this entire time. However, she turned her gaze onto Ling Han now, killing intent burning in her eyes. "You want to create children with me? Go die." The Empress launched a ferocious attack toward Ling Han. However, she suddenly discovered that her cultivation level had been suppressed to the shattering void tier just as her attack flew out. How could such a measly attack kill Ling Han? He. "Brat, I've already suppressed the cultivation level of this thorny rose. What are you waiting for?" The Notionless Saint's voice traveled into their ears again. "Oh, old delinquent." Ling Han was absolutely stupefied. What kind of saint was this? He had no bottom line at all. He turned to face Empress Luanxing, and his mouth involuntarily gaped open. Empress Wanxing's cultivation level had been suppressed, and as a result, the aura of primal chaos that enveloped her also started to disappear rapidly. Her true appearance was gradually revealed. Beautiful, alluring, pure, enchanting, seductive. Ling Han couldn't find any single adjective to describe Empress Wanxing. This was because there was a mix of purity and seductiveness, aloofness and allure, and other strikingly contrasting dispositions on her breathtakingly beautiful face. These qualities shouldn't have appeared on the face of a single person, and yet they did. However, these features didn't make Empress Wanxing appear odd in the least. Rather, they filled her with a bewitching aura that was as fiery as fire, yet as frosty as ice. Different notions of beauty were all gathered in her one body, and even the hearts of ascetic monks would flutter if they laid their eyes upon her. Her charisma had already transcended the state of mere beauty. In terms of beauty alone, the imperial empress of the Rock Palace had been no less beautiful than her. In fact, her disposition had even been slightly nobler. However, in terms of one's allure to males, there was no one else in the world who could match this empress. At least until now, Ling Han still had yet to see another woman who was as striking and as feminine as this empress. No wonder the Eternity Sky Emperor and Jade Drop Emperor were willing to give up their majestic empires for her hand in marriage. She was indeed a beauty who was worth giving up one's nation for. Elites as powerful as the Eternity Sky and Jade Drop Emperor could definitely see through the aura of primal chaos that shrouded Empress Wanxing. As such, they had naturally seen her true appearance before. In fact, those at the heavenly body tier could probably all see her true appearance. According to rumors, the left minister and the other officials all didn't dare to look at Empress Wanxing when attending the court. By the looks of it, they were afraid of committing stupid acts if they looked at the empress too much. However, the cultivation level of this breathtaking seductive beauty had actually been suppressed now. As long as Ling Han wished, he could force himself onto this empress. This kind of temptation. What man could hold himself back? Chapter 1125, Resisting. Empress Wanxing clearly knew this as well. She remained silent, yet a primitive and ancient aura radiated from her body. It was as if she were going to shatter the Notionless Saint's seal and recover her powerful cultivation. Several shadows of large snakes appeared behind her back, each of them larger than a mountain. No, they were even larger than heavenly bodies. It was as if they could open their jaws and swallow entire stars. 9 Snake. You're actually from the 9 Snake tribe, the Notionless Saint suddenly shouted. There was surprise and excitement in his voice. Ha ha ha. No wonder your aura felt so familiar. You're actually from the fabled 9 Snake tribe. Having this kind of bloodline, and with my teachings, my disciple will definitely become the #1 elite in the world. 9 Snake tribe? Ling Han felt extremely vexed. Judging by the Notionless Saint's excitement, this 9 Snake tribe was probably extremely powerful. However, he had never heard of this tribe before. Empress Wanxing was unmoved by his words. She simply continued to attack the restrictions on her body. Don't waste your strength, young lady. Although you possess the bloodline of the 9 Snake tribe, you're still only at the heavenly body tier. However, I'm already at the Genesis tier. Those at the Genesis tier are saints, and the gulf between you and me is simply too large to overcome. I can suppress the sky with a single thought, so how can you dream of ever undoing my restrictions? Empress Wanxing wasn't willing to give up. She was a ruler, after all, so how could she go down without putting up a fight? The Notionless Saint purposefully provoked Ling Han, saying, Brat, what are standing there in a daze for? Hurry up and do her. You're not attracted even though she's such a beautiful woman? Are you a eunuch? Ling Han chuckled, and said, Why is the eunuch worrying when the emperor is not one? Fuck. The Notionless Saint was slightly ticked off. He was a mighty saint, and if it weren't for the fact that he only had a wisp of his soul left, and if it weren't for the fact that he needed Ling Han to copulate with Empress Wanxing, would he really swallow such abuse? Ling Han looked at Empress Luanxing and said, "Don't worry. Although I don't dare to say that I only love one woman, I'm not someone who'll get into a relationship with any woman that I come across." Empress Luanxing felt slightly embarrassed and irritated. She had always enjoyed a much higher position than others, so when had she ever needed others to show sympathy or be charitable toward her? If her cultivation level hadn't been suppressed, she would have been able to slice Ling Han into pieces with a casual strike. However, there was nothing she could do about the current situation. She couldn't free herself from the notionless saint's restrictions, so she was truly at the mercy of Ling Han. If Ling Han forced himself onto her, all she could do was attempt to drag him down with her. "Brat, you talk quite tough. However, how long can you last? Anyhow, I'm not in a hurry. I can simply spend tens or even hundreds of years waiting for you too," the notionless saint said. He stopped speaking after this, and it was as if he were truly going to ignore Ling Han and Empress Luanxing. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. Time trickled by, and the only people in the 9th level were Ling Han and Empress Luanxing, a lone man and a lone woman. Ling Han had never thought that he was a good example of a moral person. However, as a man, there were things that he would do, and things that he wouldn't do. No matter how attractive Empress Luanxing was, he definitely wouldn't force himself onto a weak woman. This was a question of principles, and there was a bottom line that he would never traverse. He simply cultivated every day. There was a demonic power source in his body, and the life essence in this tomb was also extremely rich. Thus, the speed of his cultivation was definitely not slow. It was a shame that he couldn't enter the Black Tower. Otherwise, the speed of his improvement would be even quicker if he were able to comprehend Tao under the reincarnation tree. Even so, he was still able to stride ahead in leaps and bounds. The speed of his cultivation would definitely shock others. 10 days, 20 days, 1 month. Ling Han and Empress Luanxing both kept to themselves. Although they were in the same room, they pretty much hadn't spoken a single word to each other. "Oh, my proud Empress!" Ling Han exclaimed in his mind. How much self-control did he need not to lay his hands on her? *TTY Senior. *TTY Senior. Ling Han shouted. *TTY Brat, what did you call me? The notionless saint said in an angry voice. "You're acting improperly even though you're an old man. So, you're naturally a *TTY Senior. Ling Han smiled, and continued, "Say, *TTY Senior, where are the others?" "Concentrate on being a good bridegroom," the notionless saint said with a humph. "Why do you care about the others anyway?" It was clear that he was extremely displeased. If it weren't for the fact that he only had a wisp of his soul remaining, perhaps even he would be attracted to the 9-snake woman. "It looks like I won't be able to leave anytime soon. Help me tell my friends that they can leave first and not worry about me," Ling Han said. "Why do I have to act as your messenger?" the notionless saint said in displeasure. He had been a saint before, yet he actually had to deliver a message for a junior now? This was way beneath him. Ling Han laughed loudly, and said, "You're the one who needs my help right now. Isn't it only natural that you also help me do some trivial things? Anyhow, this is a matter between you and me, so why drag other unrelated people into the matter?" *TTY Brat, the notionless saint mumbled. "Fine, I'll pass your message to that woman. TSK, TSK, TSK. Who would have thought? You're actually quite the loyal husband." Ling Han didn't think that he was very loyal. He hadn't forced himself onto Empress Luanxing, because he simply would never force himself onto others. Moreover, what would he do in the future if he actually did force himself onto her? Was Empress Luanxing the kind of woman who would become weak and obedient after being raped by someone? No way. At that time, only one of them would be able to survive. Although Empress Luanxing wanted to kill him now, this wasn't a conflict that couldn't be resolved. However, if he ended up forcing himself onto her, their conflict would genuinely become one that would only conclude with the death of one of them. The waiting game continued. Another 2 months passed, and Ling Han reached the peak stage of the high extreme. His breaking through to the next cultivation level was imminent. This was the opportunity that he had been waiting for, summoning heavenly tribulation. Heaven was boundless and earth was vast. Among them, heavenly tribulation was the greatest. Heavenly tribulation wouldn't affect unrelated people, yet this sealed-off space would definitely be shattered open. At that time, Ling Han would be able to find an opportunity to escape. Anyhow, he hadn't been able to comprehend Tao under the reincarnation tree, so it had taken him the best part of a year to finally complete this final step. Rumble. Even saints at the Genesis tier couldn't obstruct the overwhelming might of the heavenly tribulation. Thunderclouds materialized in the sky and started to deal their brutal punishment. Huh? The notionless saint looked up in surprise, and said, **TTY brat, what divine pill have you taken? Not even a year has passed, yet you've already gone from the late stage of the high extreme to the peak stage. In fact, you're already ready to advance to the consummate level? Advancing from the late stage of the high extreme to the peak stage of the high extreme in under a year wasn't too astonishing. After all, this could be achieved as long as one had enough natural treasures. However, was the heavenly Tao something that could be comprehended so easily? The notionless saint didn't know about the demonic power source in Ling Han's body. Although there was only a shred of it remaining, it was still more than enough to help Ling Han break through to the peak stage of the mountain river tier. Huh, so that's what you're planning? You want to borrow the might of the heavenly tribulation to shatter this sealed-off space that I created? The notionless saint chuckled giddily, and said, "Brat, you sure have underestimated me." Boom! A bolt of lightning streaked toward Ling Han. Ling Han prepared to deal with the heavenly tribulation. There was no other thought running through his mind at this moment, and he actively shattered the godly bones in his body. He was going to accept the baptism of the heavenly tribulation. Empress Luan Xing retreated to the side to watch. Although divine lightning continued to thunder down, one wouldn't be swept up in the heavenly tribulation as long as they didn't actively launch an attack toward it. Of course, the heavenly tribulation would still extend its attacks toward her if Ling Han attacked her and she struck back. Ling Han's physique has clearly reached a toughness of level 4 godly metal already, so how were his godly bones shattered by the divine lightning so easily? Chapter 11:26, Don't be like that. Could it be that Ling Han is shattering his godly bones himself? This was the only possibility that Empress Luan Xing could think of. However, why was Ling Han doing this? He was doing just fine, so what was the point of shattering his own godly bones? One had to realize that the toughness of Ling Han's godly bones was already on par with level 4 godly metal. It could be said that he had the ability to pass the heavenly tribulation lying down. Is he tempering his godly bones? She was surprised, and then stunned. If his godly bones become stronger, just how freakish will his defensive ability become? Of course, even a defensive ability on par with level 5 godly metal was as weak as paper before her. However, based on Ling Han's actions, it was clear that his defensive ability would continue to grow with his cultivation level. It would continue to remain slightly stronger than his actual cultivation level. This was a terrifying notion. This man who came from a small world. Why does he possess such an astonishing ability? Is he also from some ancient divine tribe? Fuck. The notionless saint also swore in surprise. His cultivation level was even higher than Empress Luan Xing, and he had also lived for much longer than her. However, he had never heard of such a freakish physique before, much less seen one. He had initially thought that Ling Han's powerful physique was a result of him ingesting some invaluable treasure. In other words, his physique becoming so strong was just a one-off event. Now, however, he realized that it could actually grow stronger along with Ling Han's cultivation level. Is this brat also from some large clan? The notionless saint felt as if he were dreaming. Having someone with a 9-snake tribe bloodline appear was already a rare event. The 9-snake tribe was an ancient divine tribe, and they were already lost from the immortal realm. However, Ling Han's incredible talent was definitely no weaker than Empress Luan Xing's. Is he also a descendant of some ancient divine tribe? The notionless saint's astonishment was gradually replaced by delight. If the descendants of two ancient divine tribes mate, just how freakishly talented will their offspring be? Such an offspring had never appeared before, not even in the ancient past. This was because the populations of these ancient divine tribes numbered far too few. Although there had been a few prodigies from these tribes in the distant past, none of them had ever ended up marrying each other. I can't wait to see the results, he murmured to himself. Ling Han crushed his godly bones and accepted the tempering offered by the heavenly tribulation. At the same time, he also continued to channel the indestructible heaven scroll as he elevated his cultivation level to a greater height. Heavenly tribulation was nothing to Ling Han, and its most important purpose was to temper his godly bones. There was nothing more for him to do, so he decided to retrieve his divine demon sword. Since this sword could improve in quality through swallowing godly metal, perhaps it would also receive some benefits by being tempered by the heavenly tribulation. Half a day's time quickly trickled by. Ling Han circulated a drop of indestructible true fluid and reformed his godly bones. Even though he was in a closed-off realm, the spiritual qi of heaven and earth still surged into his body and consolidated his Tao foundation. Combined with the rich life essence in the tomb, he was naturally able to recover all of his vitality. His aura swarmed about vigorously, displaying the exuberance of his vitality. Ling Han descended from the sky and slipped into a new change of clothes. His old clothes had naturally been blasted into dust by the violent strikes of the heavenly tribulation. He frowned slightly as he looked up at the sky. This was because this space had actually continued to grow even under the ferocious attacks of the tribulation. This space had expanded to a size large enough for him to undergo the tribulation, in effect preventing the latter from destroying it. As expected of a saint. This was an ability that he couldn't even fathom. *TTY brat, who would have thought? You managed to surprise me again. The notionless saint laughed heartily, and said, the toughness of your physique is probably on par with level 5 godly metal now, am I correct? Ling Han knew that he couldn't hide this from a saint, even though this saint was already dead, and only had a wisp of his soul remaining. He carefully checked over his body before answering, not yet. It's far, far stronger than level 4 godly metal, but there's still some distance before it can reach the state of level 5 godly metal. Perhaps Ling Han would need to form a fifth mountain and river and pass another heavenly tribulation before his godly bones could be tempered to a toughness of level 5 godly metal. Hurry up and make me a disciple, the notionless saint shouted enthusiastically. I'm just going to ignore you, Ling Han said. He sat down and continued to cultivate. Although the notionless saint still possessed incredible powers, just being powerful alone was useless when it came to copulating and making kids. He humphed and said, do you two want to stay here forever? This place is fine, Ling Han said with a smile. It's rich with life essence, and that makes it perfect for cultivation. He naturally wouldn't back down. We'll wait and see. The notionless saint disappeared in anger. Time flew by. 3 months, 9 months, 1 year. Ling Han and Empress Luan Xing had already been trapped in this tower for a full year's time. Although this was an insignificant amount of time for immortals, the fact that their confinement could extend into decades, centuries, and even millennia made this increasingly unbearable. Ling Han's cultivation had already shot to the peak stage of the consummate level of the mountain river tier. His next step would be to either form 5 mountains and rivers, or advance into the sun-moon tier and set foot in a completely new cultivation level. However, the notionless saint's patience was already wearing thin. He issued another warning through the stone tablet, saying, my time is limited. You two have forced me to do this. Oi, you're not going to kill us, are you? Also, how is your time limited? Aren't you already dead? Ling Han said with a chuckle. Humph. I refined my own divine sense, so how can I survive for much longer? The notionless saint's voice was cold, and he said, since you're not willing to take initiative, I'm left with no option but to force that little girl to take initiative. Boom! Empress Luanxing's aura suddenly became incredibly terrifying. In this instant, she recovered her cultivation as a heavenly body tier elite. However, Ling Han didn't believe this to be good news. Quite the contrary, in fact. The notionless saint had already issued such threats, so he definitely didn't have anything good in mind. Empress Luanxing's appearance was once again shrouded by an aura of primal chaos. Her body also shimmered as it became partly hidden and partly visible, though it was still as stunning and as enchanting as ever. She raised her head to look at Ling Han, and Ling Han felt as if he had been locked onto by a wolf, even though he couldn't see her breathtakingly beautiful eyes. This feeling wasn't that of a rabbit being locked onto by a hungry wolf. Rather, it was that of a male wolf being locked onto by a female wolf in heat. *TTY Senior, what the hell did you do? Ling Han asked in shock. Hee, I merely put her in heat, the notionless saint said with a chuckle. Okay, my job here is done. I'll leave now and leave you two to have fun. Old B** starred. Stop right where you. Pung. Empress Luanxing leaped over before Ling Han could even finish his sentence. She embraced him tightly, and like a female leopard in heat, tried to forcefully push him onto the ground. No, she was more like a beautiful snake who had coiled around his body. Oi, I've already restrained myself, so can't you show some restraint too? Ling Han tried his best to break free from Empress Luanxing as he spoke, yet it was futile even though he had already reached the consummate level of the mountain river tier. After all, how could he resist an opponent who was at the heavenly body tier? Empress Luanxing moaned softly. There was no reason for this, yet her moan was filled with a bewitching seductiveness that caused a lustful heat to spread through Ling Han's body. Empress Luanxing was a breathtaking beauty who could hook a man's soul with a single glance. Even Shui Yenyu's beauty was eclipsed by her. She was like a village girl before Empress Luanxing. What man could turn down such a stunning beauty, especially when she was actively asking to be taken? Ling Han gritted his teeth. Although he had dreamed of capturing and spanking the Empress after he attained a supreme cultivation, that had merely been a dream. Taking advantage of others while they were weak was not what a man should do. Empress Luanxing had already started to kiss Ling Han. She continued to look for his lips, and when she couldn't find them, she would simply kiss him somewhere else, anywhere else. Ling Han really wanted to slap himself. He was actually trying to escape from a stunning beauty in heat. Was he retarded? Rip. A large chunk of his clothes was ripped off. Even his ferocious weapon was almost revealed. Would little Han be fucked by the Empress? Chapter 1127, Principles. How unreserved. You're the mighty Empress, so how can your willpower be so weak? Ling Han's heart thumped against his chest. She was a stunning beauty who could hook a man's heart with her flawless figure with a single glance. Back when he hadn't seen her face yet, the image of her figure would still drift into his mind from time to time. Now, however, she was actually throwing herself at him. Moreover, she even allowed him to witness her true appearance. How tempting was this? Ling Han tried to resist, yet his hands involuntarily grabbed her voluptuous breasts again. Fuck. Why did I place my hands there? It must be because they're too big a target. I reached over without even knowing. So big. So erect. So soft. So bouncy. Ling Han gulped with great difficulty. He was finally able to experience the amazing sensations this time. He shook his head vigorously. Now wasn't the time to think of such matters. Rip. The Empress couldn't contain herself any longer, and she started to rip off more of Ling Han's clothes. Fuck. 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 Ling Han cursed in his mind. His body flashed, and he disappeared into the Black Tower. A dazed look flashed across Empress Luan Xing's eyes as Ling Han's body suddenly vanished from her embrace. Her reactions were slightly sluggish under the effects of her lust. Huh? The notionless saint's voice sounded again, and he said, "Spatial god tool? It can't be." Even if he hid into a spatial god tool, the spatial god tool itself shouldn't have disappeared. As expected. That old geezer didn't leave. Ling Han grumbled in the Black Tower. Then, he felt a strong urge to slap himself across the face. A stunning beauty had actively thrown herself at him, yet he had actually hidden in the Black Tower? Did he have any feelings for Empress Luan Xing? Ling Han had to admit that this Empress charm was already transcendent above everything else. Even his heart would thump in excitement every time he saw her. Yet, he had actually fled from her embrace just like that? Just thinking about this made him feel like he was a hypocrite. He clearly lusted after her, so why was he acting like a saint? I'm not acting like a saint. It's just that I'll feel guilt and regret if I take her like that. Moreover, my aim is to reach the pinnacle of cultivation. If there are any weaknesses in my mind, I'll definitely be affected when I'm trying to comprehend the heavenly Tao in the future. Perhaps it might even lead to my death. My principle is to retain a clear conscience. As such, there's a line that I simply can't cross. With this in mind, his emotions gradually settled down. It was also because of this reason that he chose to expose the secret of the Black Tower rather than to cave in facing his lust and tangle with Empress Luan Xing. Small Tower suddenly appeared beside him, and said, "You can tell that person that I have a way to reincarnate him." Ling Han was dazed for a moment. Then, he almost jumped up in anger, shouting, "Why didn't you tell me earlier?" He had been trapped in this place for almost 2 years. Firstly, you didn't ask. Secondly, you didn't enter the Black Tower, either. I thought you were enjoying your time with that Empress and didn't want to leave, Small Tower said calmly. This dude. Ling Han muttered in his mind. However, he couldn't help but reflect on his actions. He had remained especially honest these 2 years. Was he satisfied with his current situation due to Empress Luan Xing's irresistible charm? He was astonished upon realizing this. The Empress charm was far too incredible. It was so strong that he had been affected without even knowing it. Ling Han collected his thoughts and said, "That old geezer only has a wisp of his soul remaining." Moreover, he refined his own divine sense and brought himself closer to death. However, you're saying that you can still save him? Correct. Small Tower had always been frank with its words. It said, the reincarnation tree can help him maintain the last remnants of his soul. Moreover, when you unlock the next level of the Black Tower, he'll be able to gather the power of the 5 elements and forge a 5-element body. 5-element body? That sounds so badass, Ling Han said. Tell him that forging the 5-element body is an act going against the heavens. It'll cause his immortal tribulation to occur 10 times as often. Immortal tribulation? Ling Han asked. Am I obligated to answer all of your questions? Small Tower rebutted. Then, it answered its own question, and said, no. So, don't waste any more of my precious time. I have to continue repairing the Black Tower. If it weren't for the fact that I need you to become more powerful, I wouldn't even come out to speak to you. Sigh, what a troublesome master. I need to take care of everything for him. Its body slowly became transparent and disappeared as it spoke. Fuck. Have you ever treated me like your master? Ling Han mumbled. He calmed down and collected his thoughts. Xiao. He exited the Black Tower with a flash. A seductive moan traveled into his ears, and he was immediately pulled into Empress Luan Xing's embrace. This Empress hadn't activated her divine patterns while embracing him, just in other words, she hadn't restrained him using her martial intent, and it was because of this that he had been able to hide in the Black Tower. However, her divine patterns were activated this time, and Ling Han was genuinely restrained. *TTY Senior, don't you want to take revenge? He frantically shouted. Don't you want to return to the Genesis tier? You saw just then, didn't you? I also have astonishing secrets. I can help you forge a 5-element body. However, the problem is that you'll have to face the immortal tribulation 10 times more often. What? There was a hint of pure shock in Notionless Saint's voice, and he said emotionally, Brat, is what you say true? If he could live on, and if he could take revenge with his own 2 hands, why would he still refine his own fruits of cultivation in preparation for someone else? Of course it's true. Release the technique on her first. Ling Han shouted. Hee, you really are one strange lad, the Notionless Saint commented. Fine, I'm interested to hear about your idea. Pa. Empress Luan Xing suddenly stopped moving. However, she also lost all of her strength, and she immediately collapsed into Ling Han's lap. Ling Han had been busy trying to free himself from her embrace when she had been taking initiative just then. Now that she fell silent, he was able to clearly feel just how soft, just how hot, and just how supple her body was. His mouth instantly became dry as a primal urge welled up inside him. His feelings at this moment proved the saying to be true: a concubine was better than a wife, a lover was better than a concubine, and an unattainable lover was better than an attainable lover one. He had rejected her when she had opened herself up to him, and now that it was all over, his heart became itchy with desire. Ling Han hurriedly took a deep breath. He drew on all his willpower to place Empress Luan Xing aside, and he said, *TTY Senior, I'll bring you to a place. Don't resist. Nonsense. I can forge spatial god tools myself, so of course I understand this concept, Notionless Saint said. However, the remnants of my soul have suppressed underground this entire time. It was suppressed using the power of heaven, and once it becomes exposed, I'll be left with only 2 options: fuse it into someone else's body, or have it dissipate and vanish. It's impossible for my soul to return underground. So, you'd better not be lying to me. Otherwise, I'll definitely kill you before I vanish. Ling Han waved his hand, and said, Don't worry, don't worry. I won't give you any reason to kill me. Very well, I'm coming out now. Notionless Saint was a decisive person, and the columns in the tower instantly lit up. A ball of white light hovered into Ling Han's vision. Ling Han released his divine sense and wrapped it around this ball of light. Xiao. He entered the black tower with the white ball of light. Chapter 1128, Immortal Tribulation. What? The white ball of light instantly cried out in astonishment after entering the black tower. Of course, this cry was actually just the fluctuation of one's divine sense. Notionless Saint had lost his body long ago. As such, he wasn't able to speak aloud. Brat, how is the space within your spatial god tool so huge? It's almost like a genuine world. If this saint still had a physical body, he would definitely be flailing about in shock, excited to the point of almost fainting. At this moment, Notionless Saint finally believed that Ling Han possessed the ability to help him reform his body and give him a second lease on life. After all, he would need the reincarnation flower if he wanted to reincarnate. However, this flower would only bloom once every 10 billion years. It was tremendously difficult to obtain, even for saints. Although there weren't many saints, the immortal realm was incredibly vast, meaning the absolute number of saints was actually not all that low. That being the case, how intense would the competition for the reincarnation flower be? However, he was stunned after seeing the space inside Ling Han's spatial god tool. He could also refine spatial god tools, yet even if he gave his best effort, he would only be able to refine one with an internal space equivalent to that of an imperial palace. If he refined one any larger, the space inside would become extremely unstable and face the threat of crumbling at any moment. This had to do with the path that one traveled after reaching the Genesis tier. Though they were all saints, the gulf between those at the low extreme, medium extreme, and high extreme was basically insurmountable. Ling Han led Notionless Saint to the reincarnation tree, and said, Your divine sense won't wilt here. In fact, it can even be nurtured. When I become more powerful, I'll gather the power of the 5 elements and help you forge a new body. The ball of white light that was Notionless Saint wrapped around one of the branches of the reincarnation tree. He sensed it for a moment before exclaiming, "It's true. My divine sense can actually be nurtured. Heavens! Could this be a reincarnation tree?" Although the reincarnation flower was precious, it would at least bloom once every 10 billion years. In other words, it could be obtained within 2 generations of saints. However, what about the reincarnation tree? This was a peculiar tree that people regarded as something not from this world. Moreover, it needed a whopping 12 trillion years to reach maturity. 12 trillion years. What kind of concept was this? Before a reincarnation tree, even saints could only acknowledge that they were juniors. Their lifespan was not even 1/10 that of a reincarnation tree. Notionless Saint's voice trembled as he asked, "Brat, which Saint King's inheritance and treasures did you receive?" Those at the Genesis tier were referred to as saints. Those at the low extreme were referred to as small saints, those at the medium extreme as medium saints, those at the high extreme as great saints, and those at the consummate level as Saint Kings. Although they were all saints, each increase in minor level in the Genesis tier was unbelievably difficult. It could be said that most saints would only ever reach the level of small saint, even up until their deaths. They would still be a long way off reaching the level of a medium saint. Notionless Saint was one of these small saints. She was like a mere ant compared to a Saint King. Ling Han smiled, and asked, "Senior, are you happy with this place?" "Yes. Yes, of course." Notionless Saint was over the moon with delight. He could finally take revenge for himself. After all, who would want to rely on others if they didn't need to? Moreover, he could live on and even recover his past cultivation. This naturally delighted him even more. "So, can you let us out now?" Ling Han asked. "Of course." Notionless Saint answered without any hesitation. "Oh, that's right. What's Immortal Tribulation?" Ling Han suddenly asked. Notionless Saint faltered for a moment before saying, "You negotiated with me without even knowing what Immortal Tribulation is?" Ling Han smiled, and said, "There's a tool spirit in this god tool, and it informed me of such an existence. I merely repeated its words." Notionless Saint believed in Ling Han's ability to give him a new lease in life even more upon hearing these words. This was because people would lie, but he had never heard of spirit tools lying before. He pondered for a moment, and said, "Saints have the ability to form new worlds. However, it's also because of this that we invoke the jealousy of heaven. As such, we'll suffer from the so-called Immortal Tribulation once every 100 million years. This is a curse from heaven and earth, and it brings about great disasters, great illnesses, or even heavenly tribulation. It's even possible that saints will experience great misfortunes and come across assassins and such. If you go into hiding and avoid an immortal tribulation, the next one that arrives after 100 million years will become even more terrifying. Moreover, immortal tribulations are never-ending. They'll keep arriving until one doesn't have the ability to resist them any longer. At that time, one will die, even if they still haven't reached the end of their lifespan yet. Only by becoming stronger will one be able to continually dissolve the threat posed by immortal tribulation. Immortal tribulation is like a whip that relentlessly pressures you to grow stronger." Ling Han was astonished. Saints seem like towering figures who are invincible throughout the world, yet they actually have to suffer through such curses. No wonder there are so few saints. After becoming a saint, advancing forward another step was as difficult as transcending heaven. However, immortal tribulation would arrive once every 100 million years, regardless of whether one had grown stronger or not. If one hadn't become stronger, perhaps they would luck out and pass an immortal tribulation. However, they would definitely be killed by the next one. So, cultivating is like rowing a boat upstream. If you don't advance, you'll be pushed back. If you're pushed back, death will be your only fate. Notionless Saint revealed the brutal truth about cultivation. If you forge a new body from the 5 elements, you'll have to face immortal tribulation once every 10 million years, Ling Han said. That's a matter I'll have to deal with after recovering my cultivation as a saint. Anyhow, I've already experienced several immortal tribulations, so the first few won't pose any danger to me. Notionless Saint was brimming with confidence, and he continued, I've already walked the path of a saint once. When I recover to become a saint again, I'll definitely have the ability to kill those traitorous disciples after cultivating for another tens of millions of years. Ling Han nodded. Although a body forged from the 5 elements would cause immortal tribulation to arrive 10 times more often, that was still a period of 10 million years. He still had yet to reach 50 in this second life, and he had only lived for 200 or so years in his previous life. Thus, a period of 10 million years seemed astronomical to him. Okay, Senior, let us go out first. Ling Han left the Black Tower with Notionless Saint. This matter had been resolved more smoothly than he had expected. He had only hidden into the Black Tower because he hadn't wanted to hurt Empress Wanxing. As a result, he had exposed the secret of his peculiar spatial god tool. To his surprise, the ensuing series of events ended with him obtaining Notionless Saint. Notionless Saint would nurture his divine sense in the Black Tower, so it was only natural that he would have to help Ling Han in return, right? When Ling Han exited the Black Tower, he saw that Empress Wanxing had already returned to normal. She was standing there by herself, and there was an indescribable sense of loneliness about her. This sight would cause one to develop an urge to embrace and free her from the loneliness. The charm of this empress was tremendous. Ling Han coughed as he composed himself and said, Your Majesty, we'll be able to leave soon. There was a complicated look in Empress Wanxing's eyes as she gazed at him. Her mind was a whirlpool of thoughts. Initially, she had already suppressed that faint thought in her mind and decided to kill Ling Han. However, who would have expected such a huge turn of events? Her cultivation had been suppressed, and she had ended up even weaker than Ling Han. However, Ling Han hadn't taken advantage of the situation to force himself onto her. This required immense willpower and restraint. She obviously knew just how charming she was. What weighed on her mind the most was naturally the events that had occurred just then. She had been manipulated by a saint, and as a result, become like a beast in heat. She had actively thrown herself at Ling Han, and had even forcefully pushed him down. Yet, Ling Han had actually guarded his chastity, even under such tremendous temptation. Was there something wrong with Ling Han's manhood? Impossible. She had tangled with him just then, and she could clearly feel the ferocious nature of his weapon. It had definitely been raring to go, and it had definitely been prepared to attack her. Moreover, she had seen the lust glimmering in Ling Han's eyes. However, he had restrained himself. In fact, he had even chosen to expose the secret of his spatial god tool, if only to protect her purity. The Empress had to admit that she was moved. You're tuning into the Biyao's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.